Course. What's up, everybody? As always, I am coming to you live on traditional horizontal formats and vertical formats, depending on how you like to view your videos. If you watch them on your phone, got the vertical stream going on at the same time. If you're watching at home on your TV, laptop, iPad, and you prefer a larger version of the video, you can find it also here. And you're probably watching it now as we speak. But it feels good to be back. I have been out for a minute because I've been recovering from my cold. I think my voice is better. If anything, maybe you'll hear a slight weirdness to it. I'm not, I would say I'm 95% better, so hopefully now will be a better time and I won't have to recuperate after today's stream, because I definitely want to get things back on track and get back to a normal schedule here. So very happy to be back, and I'm happy to see everyone who gets to pop in so that I can catch up with all of y'all. What's going on, Arnold? What's going on? What's happening? Hope you're doing well. Hope you're having a good day and a good week so far. What are you sorry about? Just out of curiosity, wondering what you're apologizing for. You have nothing to apologize about, as far as I'm concerned. Big reminder to everyone watching live: don't forget, hit that like button. That will greatly be appreciated by everyone here on this stream, including myself, of course. It'll help grow the channel, help with the YouTube algorithms, and all that stuff. And let's help grow this community so that we could all have a good time talking about our passions and everything. Arnold, you don't have to apologize for falling asleep. I mean, it's so funny because the minute I didn't see you in the chat anymore, I said to myself, I bet you he fell asleep, because he's probably very tired and he has to wake up early the next day for work. So it's all good, my man. Don't worry about it. How was everyone's weekends? I hope everyone had a good weekend. Mine, outside of recuperating from my cold and losing my voice, I actually did lose my voice on Friday. So after Thursday's stream, I thought I was feeling okay, but then I noticed like my throat was feeling tired, and I found myself drinking a lot of liquids, and then woke up the next day and I was talking like this. And I was like, oh boy, what did I do to myself? So I do apologize for missing a bunch of streams that I promised last week. Like I said, I'm going to get back on track this week. But outside of recuperating, I did get a chance to hang out with my friend on Saturday. This is the guy I've mentioned in the past, where we're going through our backlog of retro gaming and doing some co-op games. So we did all that. But before I went to his place, I haven't been to a Barnes and Noble in a very long time. And if you know me, I like to buy DVDs and Blu-rays a couple times throughout the year. There are two main occasions that will get me to buy like Blu-rays and kind of get back to building my physical media collection and library. One such occasion is always going to be Black Friday, because Black Friday, you'll find some of the best deals when it comes to movies, video games, all that stuff. Second occasion is whenever Criterion has their 50% off sale. Sometimes they sometimes they have their sales directly on their website, and another time they do it through Barnes and Noble, where they have like a strong partnership with this retail chain. If you don't know what Barnes and Noble is, it is one of the, if not the only remaining retail chain here in the United States that sells books, physical books, movies, CDs. You could buy vinyl from them now and all that stuff. And right now, they're currently having this month their annual 50% off sale for Criterion Blu-rays and DVDs. So I decided to take advantage. I picked up a couple of things. I'm going to share those things with you today. And I'm so excited for these because out of the 4 things that I bought, I've only seen one of these movies. So a lot of these movies are going to be first-time watches that I'm going to be very excited for. Very, very excited for. What's going on, Jester? Nice to see you. Nice having you back here. I hope you're doing well. Hope you had a great weekend. Why don't you see the chat? I'm not sure what you're talking about. The chat is right here. I'm looking at it right now. Arnold came home an hour ago. Now I'm chilling. All right. Well, I'm glad you could chill with us here. Am I talking about House of the Dragon? I am. I'll be talking about the season 5 and the season 5, episode 5 of House of the Dragon later on in the stream. Probably after the first hour, I'll be talking about it. So yeah, so excited to talk about that. A little slower episode this time around, but I feel like we're back to playing chess again on the show, which is always fun and all that. So all right, so here's my haul from Barnes and Noble, Criterion stuff. So the one movie I did see already before, and it was like when this came out, I believe this movie came out in 2023 or 2022. No, 2022. It was one of my favorite movies of that year, and that is, and unfortunately, the stupid Barnes and Noble sticker is blocking the title, but that is Triangle of Sadness. I'm very, very excited to own this movie now, finally under Criterion. This is gonna be a great rewatch. Again, this is one of the movies I saw at New York Film Festival. I really enjoyed it. This was the Palme d'Or winner of Cannes that year. And if you've never seen this movie, I highly recommend it. One of the things that I think we tend to ignore is the little descriptions of movies that they sometimes write in the back of these physical media discs and all that. So let me read you the synopsis here. Master of social discomfort, Ruben Osterland trains his unsparing lens on the world of wealth, beauty, and privilege in this audacious Palme d'Or winning satire of our status obsessed culture. A model influencer couple, that is Harris Dickinson and Charles B. Dean, who I believe passed away during the filming of this movie or shortly after. So this makes it kind of a sad thing too. Get a ticket to the Lux Life when they're invited aboard an all expenses paid cruise alongside a courtier of rich and ghoulish. But an act of fate turns their insta-perfect world upside down, pushing each provocative set piece to its auteur extreme. Osterland maps the shifting social hierarchies with the irreverence of a modern-day Louis Buñuel and the incisiveness of a cinematic anthropologist. So there you go. So I love this movie when it first came out. I really, really enjoyed it, and I can't wait to rewatch this. So really, really, really love that. Arnold, season 5, bro. I'm missing. Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. What's going on, Baby Yoda? My cold is slightly still affecting me. I don't know. My voice is definitely 90 times better than it was a couple days ago. So I'm definitely feeling much better. But thank you for that comment. All right, next movie that I picked up is Portrait of a Lady Under Fire. Now, this movie was very talked about the year it came out. Some would say that this is probably their favorite movie when it came out. This came out in 2019. I've never seen this movie, but I wanted to check it out, and I definitely wanted to add it to my collection. And again, when everything is 50% off, so that's the sale. I didn't even mention what the sale was. So Criterion, all of their discs were 50% off. And you can't beat that, really. Because, and if you're not familiar with Criterion, they are definitely a high-end boutique DVD, Blu-ray studio. They always team up with directors to release their films on physical media. And usually they have like great behind-the-scenes stuff, interviews with the director. They do a lot of commentary. So if you're a huge film fan, a lot of these DVD releases are very, very well done, especially if you're a major fan of those movies. So a quick synopsis read from the back of the DVD here, of the Blu-ray, I should say. Passion brews quietly between an artist and her subject until together they create a space in which it can briefly flourish. In this sumptuous 18th century romance from Céline Sciamma, one of contemporary French cinema's most acclaimed auteurs, Summoned to an isolated seaside estate on a secret assignment, Marianne, played by Noemi Merlant, must find a way to paint a wedding portrait of Heloise, played by Adele Haenel, who is resisting chattel marriage by further observing her. What unfolds is an exquisite tension in an exchange of sustained gazes in which the two women come to know each other's gestures, expressions, and bodies with rapturous intimacy, ultimately forging a subversive, creative collaboration as well as a delirious romance. So there you go. Very exciting stuff. I can't wait to check this out for the first time when I have a moment. Arnold, I hope you and your family are doing well. You look at all better than last time. Thank you. I definitely feel a lot better. So it's good to know that I at least look better. So that's good. Baby Yoda has a question. I'm waiting for it whenever you're ready to share. I'll talk about my next pickup, and that is Vampire. This is a very old black and white movie. I believe it came out in 1932. It's a German film, and it was supposed to be like one of the very first really scary movies in the black and white era. I'll read the synopsis back here. With Vampire, Danish filmmaker Carl Theodor Dreyer channeled his genius for creating mesmerizing atmosphere and auteur, unsettling imagery into the horror genre. The result, a chilling film about a student of the occult who encounters supernatural haunts and local evildoers in a village outside of Paris, is nearly unclassifiable. A host of stunning camera and editing tricks and densely layered sounds create a mood of dreamlike terror. With its rolling fogs, ominous siths, and foreboding echoes, Vampire is one of cinema's great nightmares. I've heard a lot about this movie, and I've heard a lot of people who are fan of the horror genre. They've talked about this movie a lot, so I definitely have been wanting to check it out, and I'm really glad that I got to get this now on Blu-ray. So I'm very, very much excited for that. This movie is crazy. Which one, Arnold? Are you talking about the Vampire? You talking about this one? Do I have a pito? What is a pito, Baby Yoda? I'm curious. Let me know what is that. I don't think I'm familiar with that. Vampire, yes. So you've seen it, Arnold. Yeah, I can't wait to check it out because, again, I've heard so many people talk about this movie, and it's been one of those movies that I've always wanted to check out for myself. So I figured, what a great way to do so by picking it up. I mean, 50% off, only $20 for this, and it comes with there's an alternate version of the movie with English text, video essay, a radio broadcast from 1958, featuring the director reading an essay about filmmaking. Plus, there's a booklet involved too about the making of the film. So I'm very much excited to check all this stuff out. I see it 2 years ago with your dad. Oh, awesome. Did you like it? Despite it being like very crazy? Colonels, what's going on, man? Nice to see you here. It's good to be back. Baby Yoda, what exactly do you want me to slam on the table? And plus, I wouldn't want to slam anything on the table because it's just going to make the sound very bad. So, again, I don't know what a pedo is. P-I-T-O. Anyway, and my last pickup from the Criterion sale at Barnes & Noble is a film that I've been wanting to see and check out for the longest time. I've seen many clips of it. I've never watched the full movie from beginning to end, and that is Akira Kurosawa's infamous Seven Samurai. This is a film that has influenced so many filmmakers. You name it, George Lucas, all the way on to even like Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni when it comes to later on stuff. But this movie, I believe Quentin Tarantino also was very, very influenced by this movie. It's an old black and white 1954 movie from Japan. If you don't know who Akira Kurosawa is, he was probably one of the best filmmakers around his time. Always did movies like around the samurai genre and all that. But I'm so excited to finally check this out. I'm going to read the synopsis on the back. One of the most thrilling movie epics of all time, Seven Samurai. In Japan, it's called Shichinin no Samurai. Tells the story of a 16th century village whose desperate inhabitants hire the eponymous warriors to protect them from invading bandits. This 3-hour ride from Akira Kurosawa, featuring legendary actors Toshiro Mifune. Of course, if you don't know who that is, he's one of the most well-known samurai actors in Japan, and Takashi Shimura seamlessly weaves philosophy and entertainment, delicate human emotions, and relentless action into an rich, evocative, and unforgettable tale of courage and hope. Again, never had a chance to watch the movie all the way through. Again, seen so many clips and references to this, and now I'm just happy that I finally have a chance to actually own it on Blu-ray. And again, owning the Criterion is always a great, great thing, in my opinion, especially if you're a big fan of movies and all that. So yeah, so I'm excited. If you've seen any of these movies, like Arnold, he saw Vampire. I'm curious to hear. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on any of my pickups. Arnold, not sure, but I think he mean all right. Well, Baby Yoda is just being a fool. All right, that's fine. No, I'm not going to answer that question, Baby Yoda. It's fine. Thank you. My Japanese accent is good. Well, I spent a lot of time in Japan, so I would hope that I at least picked up some things when I was over there. But yeah, I think one of the top things I'm looking forward to the most here is Vampire, and of course Seven Samurai. I'm so excited to check those movies out for like fully for the first time, outside of checking out clips and all. So yeah, my weekend was just enjoying Barnes and Noble, my pickup there, hanging out with my friends, and recovering from my cold and all that. So, Colonel's watching The Long Game right now. So far, so good. I might enjoy it. Golf movie about Mexicans. I paused it to listen to me. Oh well, thank you, thank you so much. Nice of you to do that. So, when did The Long Game come out? I'm very curious as to when that movie came out because I don't think I've heard of it, but it does sound pretty interesting. Arnold giving Vampire 10 out of 10. That's high praise. And it's getting me even more and more excited to check this out for the first time. So I'm very, very much excited for it. Where's my pen? Oh, here it is. All right. So hopefully everyone has had a great start to their week so far. And let's talk about some stuff, shall we? It's on Netflix. Might be Netflix only movie. Very new. All right. So I'll definitely check it out. Today I saw the first time the new Hunger Games movie. Oh, you're talking about the what's that? The Ballad of Songbirds and something something. The very excruciating long title of a movie that is. What did you think about it? Oh, the Long Legs movie. Yeah, so Long Legs I actually saw I guess at this point 2 weeks ago. So I got a chance to see I was invited to a special screening of it. And because of my cold, I wasn't able to finish my review video that I'm going to upload to the channel. And I think I have a different idea of what I want to upload now, so I'm going to be changing it. So I do apologize that that's not uploaded on the channel yet. But Long Legs is probably, in my opinion, probably going to end up being one of the scariest. Well, okay, let me rephrase. Probably one of the best horror slash thriller movies of this year. And one of the reasons why it's so good is because it stays with you well after you watch the movie. a lot of the imagery and a lot of the cinematography is so haunting in a way. And what I love about the film was that, and again, I'm not familiar at all with Maika Monroe. And that's why one of the things I'm going to be talking about today is that I allowed myself to kind of go through her filmography and her well-known movies because she's been what they kind of dub as a scream queen for a very long time now. That's why I kind of titled this "The Battle of the Scream Queens" because you have her movie and Mia Goth's movie out at the same time. But she portrayed this character that is very much like Jodie Foster's Clarice from Silence of the Lambs, but in a very different way. And what I love about Nicolas Cage's portrayal is that there's so much even after the movie that you do not know about him. And he comes across as very creepy and eerie and very like sick and sinister. And not going to be talking too much about like plot points or what happens in the movie, but there's a certain point in the movie where even after that, you're still wondering what was he doing and what caused him to fall in that alignment that he was falling under and everything. And it's so creepy, so crazy how everything was put together. And it's probably one of the better looking thriller horror movies I've seen so far this year. So I highly recommend it if you're a fan of the horror genre. It's like I said, it's more of like a psychological thriller. A lot of people are going to be comparing it to Silence of the Lambs, Zodiac, maybe even Seven. I in my Letterboxd review, I kind of said that it's like the bastard child of all those movies combined. It's not better than any of those movies, but you're gonna get a lot of similarities or things that you can tell that the filmmaker was very influenced by those movies when he made this. But what makes it very haunting is what stays with you long after you watch the movie. And even though there is somewhat of a conclusion at the end of the movie, you're still wondering like what is really going on here and how did things get that way. Even though there was a moment where there was like an exposition towards the third act, but even after that, you're just like, okay, but still, what made Nick's Cage character that way, and blah blah blah, and this and that. So I thought it was a very well done movie. Arnold, I have to say I didn't expect much, but where I saw the film, I have to say that I liked very much. Story was good. Yeah, I was actually I was kind of along the same lines like you. I thought overall, the movie was very well done. I think one of the things that really threw me off about the movie was there were many times where I felt Rachel Zellweger's character she was overacting a lot in this movie. And the accent that she had also didn't fit her character in a way. So there were a lot of those moments where she was on screen that kind of threw me off. And I don't have anything against Rachel. I know a lot of people are kind of tired of her shtick, especially like when she gives interviews and all that. I'm not at that point yet, but I have something against actors and actresses who overact because they approach it very much like kind of like the overboard, over the top acting kind of ways of the craft. And I don't know if I'm making any sense right now, but a lot of these people, they're kind of like Broadway actors, right? And they're like thespians, and they really come across as like, I am an actor, I am a performer, you know. And I felt her acting was a little bit over the top in that. But there were parts of the movie that I did appreciate. So I was a big fan of the Hunger Games movies. I never read any of the books. And there were some things that I questioned in this movie. Like, again, spoiler alert. I mean, the movie's been out for a while, but, her character is literally about to be eaten up by a bunch of snakes. And yet she decides to take a break and sing to the camera and to the crowd. And it's like I guess like a war cry song. And she's singing and singing and singing while she's just about to be eaten by snakes. And I just like, really? That is what you're going to do during your quote unquote last moments instead of trying to run away and all that. So yeah, I found that to be kind of odd and everything. By the way, I have to say, and everyone, you could all say goodbye to Baby Yoda. I find it really hilarious how, when people want to troll you on streams, I love it how they always have to hit you first with some pleasantries to kind of mask what they're going to do. Like Baby Yoda is the funniest example recently, where and so far this is the first ban of the stream, so I think we're on a good start. Um, how, oh, I'm so sorry your cold has been affecting you. It's been a while since you've been streaming, blah blah blah, and I hope you're feeling better. By the way, I'll pay you $100 to blah 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 this and that. I'm just like, all right, you know, people are funny. They crack me up. But yeah, Long Legs is a good movie. If you haven't had a chance to see it and you're into like those horror thriller type movies, I highly recommend it. But with that being said, that leads into our conversation about the weekend box office. So let us dive into everything that's currently happening at the box office right now. Now, since I wasn't able to stream last week, I do want to talk about briefly last week's box office because there's some things to definitely take note there. And let me share my screen real quick so that you can see what I'm talking about here. So this is the weekend of July 4th weekend. So the numbers I'm looking at right now only are Friday through Sunday, but it doesn't include the extended Wednesday to Thursday numbers. Despicable Me 4 obviously was the number one movie of that weekend with 75 million earned. Overall, 122.6 million as of the 5-day holiday weekend. So definitely good numbers all across the board, but it definitely did not beat what Inside Out 2 did their own opening weekend. For just 3 days, they were able to do over $100 million, I believe. So still strong for Despicable Me 4. That franchise is not going anywhere anytime soon. It did claim the number one spot. Inside Out 2 fell to second with 30.3 million for that 3-day weekend. I don't know what the full 5-day total is, but overall, as of last weekend, $534.1 million overall. So very, very strong performance still, Inside Out 2. The main thing I want to talk about is Maxine's debut. Maxine, the third in the whole Ty West X trilogy with Mia Goth, debuted with only $6.7 million that opening weekend, which sounds very low. But if you remember, if you know anything about these movies, they're made with a very low budget. So I'm thinking he probably spent $10 to $15 million, if not slightly more, on Maxine. But still, those are very low numbers that I was personally expecting from what appears to be, at least within the horror community, a beloved movie franchise that kind of built and kind of budded its way up, especially when Pearl came out. So I'm very, very surprised to see that would be the number that Maxine debuted with. And then, of course, another thing to note that Horizon, An American Saga, Chapter 1, performed so poorly at the box office that not only is it releasing on video on demand this week, but they delayed the theatrical release for Part 2. Personally, I don't think we're going to see Part 2 release in theaters this year or at all. They're probably just going to end up releasing it video on demand because it looks like no one wants to go out and watch this movie. And I don't blame them because they're already getting Yellowstone and all that stuff on streaming and through their platforms now. So why go out to the theater to watch something that looks very similar to what they're already watching at home? It just doesn't make any sense. So let's move on to this past weekend to see where the numbers are all stacking up. Let me quickly check the chat here. Colonels, people say the book is better than the movie. It's cheaper to make a book than a movie. Question is, have you ever had an instance where the movie is better than the book? I have. And I will say that, let's see. Now this is gonna be kind of obscure in a way. I kind of think that the movie adaptation of Norwegian Wood, a famous novel by I'm forgetting the author's name right now. It was a Japanese movie. I thought that movie was able to capture a lot of emotional moments that the book kind of struggled capturing. So that is like one of the rare instances where I would say the movie it was actually much better than the book. Jurassic Park, I the, honestly, my opinion on Jurassic Park is that the movie itself did a very, very good job at covering most of the important stuff from the book. But if you combine Jurassic Park 1 and 3, then you basically got the first book in the whole Jurassic Park franchise and all that. But it's true. It is very rare to say like a movie captured everything better than the book has. But it's also very hard too, because when you're reading a book, you are formulating your own imagination and your own takes and how things are portrayed in your head. So by the time you actually watch the movie, you're like, wait a minute, that's not how I pictured this guy to be. This guy's not portrayed the way I thought he was going to be portrayed and all that. So it is kind of difficult. It's very, very hard. So I would be curious to hear if anyone else have experienced that, anything where the movie was better than the book, right? Mando leaves Yoda alone one time and he doesn't be. Yeah, I know, right? Like the minute you get Grogu all by himself, he causes ruckus, right? What the hell's wrong with him? Colonels, any idea what John Krasinski wasn't available to act in it? Are you talking about A Quiet Place Day One? I think he just wanted to produce the movie. He didn't even direct the movie himself. So it is a prequel movie. It takes place in a different location from where the family that he portrayed in the first movie and second movie took place. So I think he just chose not to be in it. And again, not even directed. So he was just producing at that point. Are there games you're looking forward to? There are games I'm looking forward to checking out, but it's rare that I buy new games the minute they come out anymore, because one, they're too expensive. Two, I rarely have enough time to play a lot of games these days. That's why I always tend to go back to retro games, because they're easy to hop into and you don't have to have such a huge time commitment. But there are some games I'm looking forward to. I'm trying to think what's coming out this year. Remind me as to what's coming out this year, and I'll let you know if I'm looking forward to it. That's why Harry Potter is so necessary, while the books came out after the movies, while the world is not so successful. Well, actually, that's the reverse. So the books came out before the movies, but I believe the last book came out just fairly recently before those movies came out, right? So I think, it's a great companion piece from what I recall, because I only read the first two Harry Potter books, and I read them after I watched the movie, and if anything, it helped explain a little bit more things. It helped paint better pictures of some of the main characters that we were introduced to. I never had a chance to read the rest of the book series, but I was a huge fan of the movies. But a lot of people are saying that if you really want like a great companion piece to the movies, the books are the best way to go. And it's one of the rare occasions too that I would say that there wasn't a lot of discourse, at least not too much, about the movies compared to the books. I feel like a lot of people were very happy with how that came out. Unlike Game of Thrones, where once they veered away from the books, because guess what? They ran out of books. Then I think that's when people start complaining and all that. At the same time, I also just think George needs to really start finishing all of his books before he passes away, because you're going to leave a lot of people who are going to be extremely pissed off and disappointed. Arnold wants to play the NFL game, and oh yeah, that's a great one. The new Star Wars game, Outlaws. That is a game I would love to try. That is a game that I would love to try when that comes out, because that looks interesting to me. I'm a little wary on it because it is Ubisoft, and I think Ubisoft messes up a lot of stuff recently. But I am very curious as to how that game's going to turn out. So yeah. All right. So this past weekend at the box office, Despicable Me 4 remains in first place with 43.5 million. Overall, domestic gross is $210 million, which is awesome. It's doing, like I said, this movie is not going anywhere anytime soon. So that is this franchise is going to be around for a while, whether you like it or not. Long Legs, the movie I was just talking about previously, and the one horror movie that is going toe to toe with Maxine right now, came in second place, and this was Neon's best opening weekend for any of their movies that they're coming out. So really, really happy to see a great turnout for this. 22.4 million opening weekend there. Great stuff for that movie. I think well deserved. I think this is a great example of marketing, how marketing really worked, because the marketing campaign for this movie was brilliant. And I think one of the reasons why you're seeing this movie perform much better than Maxine is. What's going on, Scorched? You're watching Vampire Kiss right now. That's the movie with Alyssa Milano. Is that the one I'm thinking about? And Nick Cage? Or is that the Nicolas Cage movie? I'm thinking of maybe two different movies, but let me know which one that is. Arnold, Harry Potter is the reason why I'm immersed in this world and why I'm so interested in all nerd stuff. That's awesome, man. That's great. It's nice to know that that was like your gateway to the world of all of these things. Arnold, I have a good friend who can play before they come out and test, and he was allowed to play the new Star Wars game. Oh, that's great. What did he think of it? Did he say anything? Scorch, it is the Nicolas Cage movie. Okay. Yeah. Oh, that's the movie. Yeah. I briefly talked about that movie when Renfield came out with my friend on the podcast. And yeah, that was like definitely one of his crazier movies from back in the day. I've never had a chance to see the whole thing, like, all the way through, but I would love to hear your thoughts when you're done watching it. So yeah, so Long Legs, again, great performance for them. Inside Out 2 fell to third place, 19.9 million. Overall, domestic gross 571.8 million. It looks like the wind is getting knocked out from under it. It's slowly fizzling out, because I think everyone who wanted to see it already had a chance to see it. But if you look at the worldwide total, look at this number, everybody. Look at this number. $1.3 billion. It is one of the first movies this year to cross the $1 billion mark worldwide. Isn't that amazing? And it's an animated movie, an animated sequel. Unbelievable, but well deserved. Like I said before, Inside Out 2 is probably one of my top movies of the year so far. I would definitely put it within my top 5 for sure. But what a great feat that thing has accomplished. Good for them on that one. But there's a downside to that too, because that means this is telling Pixar and Disney sequels work, sequels bring money, sequels bring people to the theaters. So Pixar already said it before that they're going to be focusing a lot on sequels, on well-established properties that have already been out there. So that's why we're also getting a Toy Story 5. That's why we're going to end up probably getting another Monsters, Inc., I'm sure. And I won't be surprised, because even though you don't think they do well, the Cars franchise does really well with kids. So I won't be surprised if we see another Cars movie sometime in the future. Scorch saying, very funny movie, highest recommendation. I need to check that out one day. One day I just need to sit down and just commit to watching Vampire Kiss, because that is definitely one of those, like, from what I'm hearing all the time, one of the great bad movies you could watch. And I'm all for that. I love watching movies like that. Let's see. Coming in fourth for this past weekend was A Quiet Place Day One, $11.3 million, 115.7 domestically so far. I think worldwide it is at 221.6, which is not bad for this franchise. Again, this franchise is done through a lower budget, not a lot of fanfare and all that, but it definitely is a great franchise, and I really, really appreciate the franchise, and I love it. And this was a fun movie. It was very entertaining. The other new release from the weekend was Fly Me to the Moon. This is the latest rom-com with Scarlett Johansson and Channing Tatum, 9.4 million. Not surprised that it only came in fifth in earning this much, because rom-coms typically just don't do well anymore in the theaters, unless it's like one of those rare occasions. Like last year, you had J-Law doing that rom-com that performed extremely well, because it was one of the first times we saw J-Law do a movie like that. So I think that's one of the reasons why it did well. Plus, you had that movie with Sydney Sweeney and Glenn Powell. I think that movie did well because there's a lot of fans of Sydney Sweeney and Glenn Powell. And I think also the marketing campaign for that, them touring around, really playing off on the whole couple thing and all that, I think that really helped a lot with movies like that doing well. Just like Longlegs. The reason why so many people went to see Longlegs was because of his marketing campaign. You couldn't get away from it, from social media, YouTube, all those things. They released a series of very, very short snippet clips and trailers and teasers that kind of like built on this mystery as to what what Longlegs is, who is Longlegs, and all that. So I think that's one of the driving forces as to why it did so well at the box office. And Maxine didn't, because they don't spend a lot of marketing dollars on Maxine. And that's just not what A24 does. So yeah, Fly Me to the Moon is on fifth. Arnold, he said that the game has a great graphics and the world and mechanics are very reminiscent of Tomb Raider and Uncharted as you move through the world. Well, that's promising. That's kind of promising. That sounds like something I would definitely love to check out. Well, I already knew I was kind of interested in it, so the more so now. So that's awesome, man. That's really great to hear. Coming in sixth place was Bad Boys Ride or Die, 4.2 million, 184.7 domestically. Worldwide, I'm going to say 200 million. 378. All right, I undercutted it. So 378.2 million worldwide. I won't be surprised. I don't want to see it, but I won't be surprised if in a year or two we get to see another Bad Boys movie. But I don't think we need it, and I'd rather not see that, to be honest with you. Seventh place, Horizon, American Saga. Like I said, 2.2 million, 26.8 overall. Not performing well in the slightest. And I don't think this movie is, we're not going to be seeing Chapter 2 release in theaters at all. Now, Maxine drops from fourth to eighth place. Plus, not only that, 69% drop off from the week before, and 80 theaters dropped it from their rotation. So it only pulled in 2 million, 11.7 million overall domestically. It's so curious to me as to why this movie, like I said, that has a pretty decent fan base in the horror community, not doing as well as a Longlegs. And I really do think it has a lot to do with marketing. I guarantee you the minute this movie drops on video on demand and streaming, more people are going to end up watching that film. So it is very, very interesting to see why Maxine is doing so poorly at the box office. So I guess when you say, the battle of the Scream Queens, right now it looks like, Maika Monroe is winning hand over fist currently at the box office, which is a big surprise to me because I really was expecting Maxine to do so much better. But especially coming off on the high that Pearl had. I mean, a lot of people were saying Pearl is probably one of the best movies that Mia Goth has ever done. And I tend to kind of agree, too, with her performance in it. So it's kind of baffling to me. And then to round off like the rest of the list here, you have Sound of Hope, which is a hope-based film that is out in theaters. There was a re-release of The Lion King to kind of celebrate an anniversary, a new movie called Touch from Focus Features, and everything else you could see is under $1 million in all there. So yeah. So a lot of interesting stuff coming out of the box office, a lot of interesting stories really coming out. Obviously, horror is doing so well this year so far, and we're only halfway through the year, right? But we had a lot of major high expectations for some horror films that are living up to it, and then some that had high expectations and that are underperforming. But the horror genre as a whole seems to be doing really well this year, especially when you compare it to last year. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to kind of break down what the horror movie films are doing so far this year compared to last year, and see and maybe guess where it's going to all end up when it's all said and done. Because I do feel like a lot more people are going to theaters this year. And there's a report that I'm going to read in a little bit that kind of mentions that numbers for box office this year may surpass pre-pandemic box office, which is a great sign. So we'll do kind of like a little look into that here. I'm not saying we need a new Men in Black movie. I won't be surprised. Honestly, I really won't be surprised if that's something that we get sometime soon. Gorilla Fantasy, what's going on, man? It's been a minute since I've seen you. I hope you're doing well. Hope you're having a good week, a good day. Arnold, if Will Smith don't want you, can play for him, bro. I think you do a good job. I think Will Smith will be doing just fine. As you could see, despite the slap heard around the Hollywood industry, he seems to be coming back in full force with a vengeance. Not only is Bad Boys doing well, but also he has a new song that just came out that people seem to like and all that. So I think he'll be doing all right. Also, quick reminder, if you're watching live, don't forget, hit that like button. All of us here will greatly appreciate it. Trust me. And everyone will thank you. Theater is a cinema in America, right? In my definition, it is. But for other people, theater also means like Broadway theater, like live performance theater. So I try to use the term cinema because I know that's more of a worldwide term. But yeah, for most people, theater is also kind of cinema. But you know, like I said, to those who are big into Broadway and musicals, theater also, that's what they call that too. All right, so what I did is like I pulled a bunch of numbers of the horror movies that came out last year and all the horror movies that have come out already this year. And I kind of want to do like a quick comparison of them and see how the genre is doing so far. Because it feels to me like there's like a huge explosion of horror movies that started off the year big time, you know? And let's take a look at some of these numbers here. Let me see if I can increase that so that everyone can see on the stream there. All right. So the number one horror movie so far this year is A Quiet Place Day One. And I know a lot of people will be like, well, is that really a horror movie? It's sci-fi horror, you know, which is a genre, right? It's a subgenre of the horror movie franchise, of the horror movie genre. We're going to get another one of those in a couple of months with Alien Romulus. So I have a strong feeling that that movie is going to do really well in the theaters too. But we could kind of see how something like that is going on with A Quiet Place Day One, 115.7 domestically at the box office, right? So it's a top winner so far this year. Then you had The Strangers Chapter 1, 35.2 million. Night Swim that came out in January, 32.4 million. Imaginary that came out in March, 28 million. Abigail with 25.8 million. Long Legs, 25 million. You know, all of these movies that came out so far this year tend to be doing decently. Now, a lot of these numbers aren't that great and that high in many people's opinions, but you also have to think about it too. The horror genre and horror movies in general are probably one of the easiest movies to make because you don't necessarily need big budgets for them. I guarantee you a lot of the budgets for most of these movies are probably under $50 million, right? Especially when you go into someone like the Neon movies and the A24 movies, like those movies tend to have much lesser budgets. So I think the return of investment, the ROI, is going to be much higher when you put that all into perspective here and all that. But so far, if you add up all of the horror movies that we got so far this year, and a lot of these totals are also not finalized because there sometimes data is like a week behind. Currently, we're at $378.2 million for the year so far domestically. Worldwide, we're at $712.4 million. This is just this year horror movie genre, right? Now let's compare it to last year. What's going on? Am I dead? Nice to see you back. Nice to see you here. Thank you for joining. Always appreciate it. I hope you're having a good day and good week so far. Let's see. Arnold. Yeah, because in Germany, theater is musical stuff and cinema is movie stuff. So this is why I was confused. Ah, I get it. Yeah. So I will do my best to call it cinema instead of theater. But I for most Americans, they always say, oh, I'm going to the theater, which means they're usually going to watch a movie. They make so many horror movies they do, but I feel like this year just feels like the influx was felt ever since the year started. You know, I felt like there was a lot of new horror movies that are coming out, and there's so many more coming out for the rest of the year. And I think with something like Long Legs, which is probably one of the most talked about and hyped up movies in the horror franchise for a very long time. So it does kind of feel like, the horror genre, it has a lot of attention on it right now, which is not a bad thing. I think that's really good. And for someone like me, who I don't really watch a lot of horror movies, but I am learning to appreciate it more and more now every year. It's just interesting to see where the horror genre is going and all. Abigail was not a horror movie for me. It was so funny. Well, it could be horror comedy, in your opinion, right? There are movies like that. Like, for example, Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice is going to be classified as horror comedy this year. So there are definitely subsects of the horror genre. Gorilla Longlegs, I don't know much about, but it has Nick Cage. He's great when, yeah. Longlegs. Now, again, if you love horror thriller, I would say that Longlegs is definitely more of like the psychological thriller genre, very similar to like Silence of the Lambs, Zodiac, or even Seven. Then this is a movie you should probably check out. It's just, think of those movies, but with like a sprinkling of horror in it. And Nick Cage's character is by far one of the creepiest characters that he's ever played so far to date. And one of the things I love about Longlegs is how it stays with you. And that's something that I was saying earlier in the stream. It haunts you. And it's one of those movies that you think about well after you've seen it. And it's been, for me personally, it's been 2 weeks since I've seen the movie and I'm still thinking about it. And I can't wait for it to like release on digital, because it's one of those movies I definitely want to watch with with a lens, with a magnetic lens, because I definitely want a magnifying lens, because I definitely want to see every little detail of the movie, because you miss so much when those movies come out in the theater and all. So last year, I think one of the biggest surprises for everyone was Five Nights at Freddy's, because one of the reasons why this was a major surprise was this movie came out both theatrically and on Peacock digitally at the same time in the same weekend. And normally when things like that happen, people would rather watch the movie on streaming versus in the theater. But since it also came out during Halloween week, it made a killing at the box office. And it's one of those rare occasions where that tactic didn't bite them in the ass. And because of that, they're doing a sequel and all that. So that was the biggest surprises there. Then you had, of course, Scream, right? With Scream 6. And anything with the Scream franchise is going to do really well. Another big surprise was Megan. Even though I thought it was decent, it was okay. It wasn't like the best thing. But this was around the time where more and more people were open to coming back to movie theaters, right? So I feel like there also needs to be a little asterisk there. But Megan was like a big surprise hit, and that came out in January, right? Then you had the Nun 2, you have Insidious. Anything involving those franchises will always do well. Evil Dead Rise, The Exorcist. This year, compared to last year, we're definitely seeing a lot more like religious horror movies, with Immaculate, all the little Exorcist movies that we're getting. And I felt like we kind of started seeing that last year with Exorcist Believer and then the Pope's Exorcist, right? It's also funny how you have Russell Crowe attached to a lot of these type of movies. Then, of course, you had Saw X, Talk to Me, which is like a great A24 horror movie. Very, very low budget. And look how much it did, 48.2 million. Really, really great stuff. And then on and on and on. So when you add up the total of the year, last year, domestically, $898.9 million, right? And worldwide, $1.86 billion as far as the horror franchise is concerned. Now, what are we going to see this year? Like I said, right now, we're at 378, just very close to 400, 712. So we're not at the $1 billion mark yet worldwide. But we have a lot of movies still coming out for the rest of the year. Like I said, Alien Romulus, sci-fi horror. Beetlejuice, horror comedy, right? Then there's a lot of Nosferatu, which is coming out in December. A very, in my opinion, highly anticipated movie in the horror franchise. So it's really, really interesting to see how this is going to turn out. Will this year end up beating last year? I don't know, but I would say quality of horror movie is probably at its peak so far this year. With a lot of the quality of horror movies coming out that are very, very well done, and movies that I will definitely always recommend if anyone's looking for like a nice horror type movie to watch this year. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. and what you think about the horror franchises, the horror genre specifically this year compared to last year, and what you're looking forward to and what you're expecting for the rest of the year. Any news on Salem's Lot remake coming out? Last time I checked was that I think it's still slated to come out this year, but I don't know. Anything other than that, I'm not really sure about. So I'm curious about that too, because that is another classic Stephen King novel that I think is long overdue for like a revival. So I'm very curious as to how that's going to come out. Let's see. Arnold, today my day was 3 out of 10, but you make my day 8 out of 10. Awesome. I'm always very happy to hear that. What do I need to do to make it 10 out of 10? Let me know. I'm just very curious. Gorilla, Nick Cage is most under-respected actor of all time. People just don't understand who great he is. I totally agree. What makes it even better is his choices of roles that he's doing with the last one. I want to say like 6 years, because a lot of his movie choices have been phenomenal. You had Dream Scenario that came out last year that I really enjoyed. Unbearable Likeness of Being was a fun little funny kind of thing. Renfield was pretty hilarious. Pig, I still think Pig is one of his best roles that he's ever had. And now I will add Longlegs to that list, to that right under Pig. Of course, voicing Spider-Man Noir and all that. Nick Cage is such a great actor, and I love what he's choosing to do in his later years in life. So really, really great stuff. So whenever I hear Nick Cage is attached to something, of course, I get really excited and all that. Gorilla saying Russell Crowe is at his best when he's overweight and throwing chairs in hotel lobbies. I can't argue with that. Recently saw Color Out of Space the other day for the first time. Awesome. Gorilla, what movie is that? Color Out of Space? I don't think I've ever heard of that movie. Jester saying Nick Cage is awesome. I think everyone here will agree with that. My dad, they did remake Salem's Lot in 2004 with Rob Lowe and Donald Sutherland, but it wasn't very good. I think that's maybe why I don't remember it. Because they also remade Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Like, I feel like in the early 2000s, they remade a lot of those type of infamous horror movies from like the late 70s and 80s that I think a lot of people tend to have forgotten at this point, because not a lot of them were actually very good. Didn't they remake Psycho also with what's his name? Oh my god, why can't I think of his name? He was in Dodgeball. You know who I'm talking about. Nick Cage horror movie based on a live stream. Really? Color Out of Space. Oh no, retracted. Maybe that's not the case. I like the movie's Willy's Wonderland. It's basically if Nick Cage was in Five Nights at Freddy's. And Vince Vaughn. Yes, thank you. Am I Dead? Yes, Vince Vaughn. That is correct. That was in the early 2000s, wasn't it? Jester, I almost watched Willy's Wonderland for the first time over the weekend because of Longlegs and it being released recently. There are a lot of movies of Maika Monroe that I'm not familiar with, that I've never seen. So I decided to do like a little watch of her movies for the first time. And I was going to squeeze in Willy's Wonderland in there, but I haven't had a chance. I ran out of time. So I hope to do that basically sometime soon. Gorilla Fantasy, Nick Cage horror based on Lovecraft. Oh, really? Oh, that's interesting. I might have to add that to my list. I've never heard of that movie. Arnold saying you want to do 10 out of 10, you just have to do what you do so far because some people were voting. Arnold, you're awesome. I always appreciate the kind words, really. Serious autocorrect problems? No worries. Autocorrect always does us in somehow. Jester, Nick Cage doesn't say a single word in the entire movie and beats the crap out of animatronics. It's awesome. That sounds like a movie I would definitely be all about, because that just sounds like a lot of fun. Just having Nick Cage be all Nick Cage, like Nick Cage rage, I'm all for that. I'm definitely all for that. So yeah. So I think the horror movie genre has a lot going for itself. And I think one of the reasons why I also think we're seeing such a huge influx of horror movies within the last couple of years is because, honestly, during the pandemic, this is probably the easiest genre to write for and make. You don't, like I said, don't need a lot of budget, right? It's very easy to kind of write about experiences of isolation and unknown, because I think a lot of people are experiencing that during the pandemic and during lockdown. So I think a lot of creators decided to do movies like that, and why we're getting such an influx of those movies uh, for this year, last year, and I'm pretty sure well into next year we're going to be seeing a lot of horror movies. But like I said, if anything, I think the quality of horror movies are extremely high this year, because I've seen quite a bit that I was like, wow, that was a really well done horror film. So, Jester saying, have you heard of a movie Baby Driver? It doesn't have Nick Cage, but it's great. I love Baby Driver. That's with Ansel Elgort and the now canceled Kevin Spacey. Also, Jamie Foxx is in that. It's a great movie. I love that director, Edgar Wright. A lot of the movies that he makes, I'm a huge fan of. So, yeah. But I'd really like to know what you look like without a beard. No one's ever going to see that. No, 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 no. I'm never going to do that. The bees. Oh no, that not the bees. Clone Wars for life. What's going on, Ben? How you doing, man? How was your tournament? I believe it was this past weekend, right? Let us know how you did. Or am I mistaking it? I don't know. I've been away for a while, so I feel like all my timeline is all kinds of messed up. Jester, did you just watch Baby Driver for the first time recently, or is that a movie you just really like? Also, really appreciate everyone popping in, showing up. I was a little concerned that not sticking to a good schedule the last week because of my cold was going to hurt, and people are probably going to get tired of me not being online. But I'm really happy that you guys are showing up. So really, honestly, it means a lot to me. You had a Comic-Con thing that you helped out. That's right. That's right. You didn't mention that you were going to do something at a Comic-Con. How did that go? Like an American Japan Baby Yoda. The Wicker Man, I only saw the original Wicker Man. I never saw the remake with Nick Cage. It was one of those movies that when I saw the trailer for it, it just looked so absurd to me, right? This came out, correct me if I'm wrong, this came out early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, right? And that was already during a time where I kind of given up on the horror genre. Um, on occasion, I saw movies like Saw and things like that, but I just didn't pay attention to horror at all. Now that I'm finding myself getting back into it, I have the pandemic to thank for that, honestly. Especially when it comes to A24 movies. I have a huge catalog of things I definitely want to go back to. Wicker Man is definitely on that list, but I'm waiting because I heard so many mixed things about it that I don't know if I want to do that to myself just yet. But yeah, so. But did you see it, Gorilla? What did you think about it? I'm curious what your take is on it. Jester saying, I watched it so much the last week. I watched in 2019 with my grandpa. We loved, so I bought it on DVD so I can watch it as my. That's awesome, dude. Yeah, Baby Driver soundtrack is fantastic, and I don't have much to say about Ansel Elgort, although I do. There are some movies that he's done that I really appreciate. If you've ever seen the series Tokyo Vice on HBO, on Max, I should say, check it out. I think his acting in that is so good. But Baby Driver was such a fun ride, no pun intended. But it was such a great movie, fun movie. The soundtrack is brilliant. And I just love the performances overall. And regardless of what you think of Kevin Spacey now, I also felt, look, I'm going to recognize when someone's a good actor. And Kevin Spacey is a good actor in the movies that he's in. Baby Driver, Usual Suspects, American Beauty, just to name a few. But I have, I can separate the man from the art or the artist from the art. So I don't have a problem of doing that. But yeah, Baby Driver is a great film for sure. Oh, Clone Wars, you got Mando's autograph. Brendan Wayne, nice. For those of you who don't know, Brendan Wayne was one of the stunt actors for The Mandalorian. I believe he has two. Brendan Wayne is also the son of. Wait, is he the son or is he the nephew of legendary actor John Wayne? I forget which one he is, but he is part of the John Wayne family. And from interviews I've seen him do, he reminds me very much of John Wayne. I'm saying if he shaved his own beard, he'll look like Boss Baby. I think if I shave my beard, I probably look like Lou Diamond Phillips. Do I know a site where I can watch Navy NCIS? I do not. And NCIS, that sounds like that would be an NBC Universal property. Maybe? I would check Peacock. Peacock or Paramount. See if they have it. Because that sounds like that would be on one of those platforms. Jester saying, it hurts me that Baby Driver is 7 years old. I know. That movie came out quite a while ago. It's kind of crazy when you think about it. Clone Wars, sorry, I have not had a chance to watch it. You know what? I have some time. Let me watch it now. Let's have everyone enjoy it. Clone Wars for Life. Brandon Wayne was the main stunt man for the wear of this. Yes, that is correct. But is he the nephew of John Wayne or is he the son? I forget what is it? All right, let's all pull this up. Clone Wars is such a great supporter of the stream. He shows up, great conversations all the time. So I've always promised to watch these videos, and I never had a chance to. But let me see. Here we go. Matt Emig, right? Is there a particular video you would recommend me watching? I see 2012 Diamond Nationals, 2011. Let me know. The Diamond Nationals. Okay. So 2012? 2012 or 2011? Or is there a more recent one? You know what? Let me go to his channel. And let me see if I can see the most recent one. Are you recommending 2011? Okay. I'll pull up the 2011. Let's see. And this is your teacher, right? Clone Wars. Gesture is suggesting you could search up NCIS streaming. It tells you automatically what it's on. Yeah, Arnold. Let us know if you have a chance to find it too. All right, so Clone Wars for Life works for this guy. If you don't know Clone Wars, he competes in martial arts weaponry and technique. He does competitions for that. And this is a guy he works for who now is a stuntman for Marvel and Star Wars. So let's check this out. And this is a competition. Clone Wars, is this the type of competition that you perform at? Jester's got. All right, Jester. If I'm still around and you happen to stop by, great to see you. If not, I'll definitely catch you another one during another time. But thank you. All right, let's watch this. Maybe the music I can't play because it is copyrighted music. So, wow, this guy is quick. Holy cow, he's fast. That's pretty impressive. With the split and everything, Jesus. Wow, this guy is bananas. That's pretty damn good. Oh my god, he's amazing. If I saw if if someone walked up to me in an alley and he started doing all those moves, I'd just be like, "All right, good on you, buddy. I don't want to have anything to do with you. Here, take my money." That's amazing. That's unbelievable. Really good stuff. Do you have any video of your stuff that you do that you wouldn't mind us checking out? A gorilla saying, "How do you like the liminal space horror genre you find on YouTube? Stuff like Backrooms and Mikhail successfully hitting metal 17 times." Arnold saying these are the movies that the father makes when he slams the door too much at home. Yeah, Clone Wars. If you want to share any of your own videos, let us know for sure in the chat, and I could check it out here. Gorilla, back to your about liminal space horror. I'm not that familiar with it. I've heard of Backrooms, and I've seen like little pictures and clips of that kind of stuff. What I tend to watch also is I have a fascination of those urban explorers who goes to like dead malls or abandoned malls and who just like walk around and look at these things and go through stores and all that. Even amusement parks, like old rundown abandoned amusement parks. So if it's anything like that stuff, then I probably should watch more of that because I for some reason I'm so fascinated when it comes to watching that stuff. And I'm always imagining what if someone was like hiding out and kind of pop up while they're exploring these places. I think it would be kind of like fascinating to me. You weren't very good back then. I mean, look, it's stuff that I could never do. So whenever I see people do stuff like that, I'm always very, very amazed, very much amazed. And I love that this guy specifically is now working as a stunt person for Marvel and Star Wars. So I think that's awesome. Is there anything he did that we would know? Girl, abandoned mall videos are amazing. Yeah, they are amazing. I forgot how I came across it for the first time, but I remember going down a rabbit hole one weekend and I just watched video after video after video. I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is like, I don't know why I find this so fascinating, but I do. You know. Oh, we're gonna see a lot of his stuff in Deadpool. Oh, in Deadpool 2. Sorry, not Deadpool Wolverine, but he was also in Kenobi. That's awesome. Good for him. That's really really cool. He's working on a new Marvel movie, which I'm sure he can't talk about, right? He does a lot with Bucky. Oh, so that means that what you call it? That he's probably going to be in the new Captain America movie, right? Which, by the way, I know a trailer dropped recently. I haven't seen it yet. I'm going to be doing a full reaction video of a bunch of trailers that came out. So I know I'm so behind. I don't know what's wrong with me, but yeah. Like most scenes of someone getting hit or thrown by Bucky, it's him. Oh, that's awesome. That's great. How is it? Does he say how it is working with Sebastian Stan? Because he seems like an interesting dude. Arnold just saw this Trump video, and in the comments, one comment that aim assist was. Girl, it's because we grew up in Mask and seeing them now abandoned and falling to grew up in malls. You mean? I'm sure you mean. It's dystopian is a way that really hits hard. Yeah, the autocorrect got you again. Clone Wars, he likes him. Oh, that's good. Yeah, Sebastian Stan looks like an interesting guy, and that guy, he's doing a lot of interesting choices when it comes to movies. He's one of the actors I think is doing it right, where he does the Marvel movies, where he gets the majority of his money, right? And it allows him to do a lot of these small, more independent movies. Like he just came out with a new movie, a trailer for this new movie for A24 that looks fascinating. I've seen only pictures of it, but I think I like him as an actor and what he's deciding to do with his career. But yeah, Gorilla, you're right. Like if I wish I can go, there was an arcade that I used to go to a lot. I mentioned it in the stream before. Smiles, it was called at one point. Super Amusements, it was called at another point. Like when that closed down, it would have been great to see that place quiet and deserted. And you're right, we grew up with a lot of these places, so it's so interesting to see it deteriorating and it falling apart. So also just one thing about the whole Trump thing. I'm sure a lot of you are probably wondering, or maybe not, those who aren't in America, what I feel about the whole thing. We don't get it. I never get political on this channel. But when I found out about what happened over the weekend, I was bummed out. I was bummed out because regardless of what you think of a guy, no way in no reality should something like that ever happen to anybody, honestly. It sucks. I feel very, very not confused but disheartened about the country that I'm in right now. It's going to be a tough year with the elections coming up soon. But yeah, I was pretty much bummed out by it, because regardless of what happened, if it went one way, it could have been much worse. With the way it happened now, it's still going to be bad. So there's no winning here, and the weekend was just filled with a bunch of disappointing news. That dropped. Then Richard Simmons passed away, an icon of mine. Well, not an icon, but another figure that I grew up watching and seeing on TV all the time. Me being a major Howard Stern fan, he was always like an amazing guest on Howard Stern, very funny. Even though, yes, they made fun of him a lot, but he was a good sport about it most of the time, And it's kind of sad how he lived his remaining years in seclusion and in hiding. The days before that, Shelley Duvall died. Yeah, I paid tribute to her on Thursday when I did my last stream. Remember watching her as a kid in the Popeye movie, of course, The Shining, Fairy Tale Theater, which is a series of videos that I used to watch all the time. So we lost her. Shannon Doherty passed away because of cancer, right? That she's been battling for years. I was never a big 90210 fan, but I had a lot of friends who used to love that show. That was definitely my childhood growing up. I'll never forget her in Mallrats and in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. I thought she was really funny in those roles. So Dr. Ruth Westheimer, whether you knew her or not, I knew her because when I was a little kid, I used to go to bed and my mom always had the radio on, and she always had this late night show on the weekends that talked about sex and all that. And I was always asking my mom, like, what is she talking about? And she was just like, don't worry about it. You'll know about it when you grow up. And she just the voice and recognizing her voice and all that. So I feel like a lot of these like iconic visions of me growing up were all slowly getting removed from current history, and with all that happening, it kind of bummed me out over the weekend, to be honest. So it's just unfortunate, so, but yeah, a lot of big names over the weekend we lost. Yeah, exactly what Gorilla says. Dr. Ruth, she survived the Holocaust, right? She was a sniper in the Israeli army. Can you believe that? This little tiny woman was known for her sniping in the Israeli army. Went on to be like one of the best speakers and advocates for sex and speaking about sex and being open-minded about sex. But you're right, she couldn't escape the Grim Reaper, you know. But at least she died at an older age, unlike Shelley Duvall and Shannon Doherty, you know. So, and Richard Simmons too. Very, very unfortunate to hear about those names passing and all. So, interesting weekend. Very interesting weekend. Arnold, did you see the docu about Dan? Oh, Dan, the documentary. Yeah. Um, about the Nickelodeon guy, the producer. Yeah, I watched that around the time it first came out, and I wasn't when those shows were popular on Nickelodeon. I was already too old for those shows, but I was aware of them. You know, I knew people who used to watch those shows. But it's so crazy when you see these things being put to light. Yeah, it's very disturbing. Very, very disturbing. And then how he tried to kind of half-heartedly apologize for things, and then, you know, then you had some people that were defending him, but then more people came out, and it's such a hot mess. Such a hot mess. Oh, Arnold, what do you wanting me to promise? Should I be worried? Does he have a child with Amanda Bynes? I don't think so. That would be, oh my god, if that was true and that came to light, oh my god, then that would be major controversy. I mean, he basically groomed her, right? So groomed her. I should take this back. Groomed her to be a star in Hollywood, not with anything behind the scenes. At least not that we are aware of. They didn't talk about any of that stuff in the documentary. I'm waiting for Arnold's response. I'm so curious what he wants me to promise. But since we were talking about the box office, there's this very interesting article that came out. I believe it came out yesterday from the Hollywood Reporter that I did kind of want to talk about briefly with you guys. And I want to read it for the first time here too. Box office grosses may surpass pre-COVID levels in 2026. That's good news. In a new report, accounting firm PwC, that's Price Waterhouse Cooper, I think, diagnoses plateauing streaming revenue per user forecast and revenue to hit $1 trillion and calls for business model reinvention. An existential imperative. All right, get this video out of here. All right. Global box office and global total cinema revenue will surpass pre-COVID-19 pandemic levels in 2026, but admissions won't do so over the next 5 years. Global subscriptions to streaming services will pass a 5.6% compound annual growth. Okay, numbers, blah, blah, blah. These are just some of the predictions contained in consulting and accounting firm PwC's Global Entertainment and Media Outlook published late on July 15th. The annual forecast, which covers 13 sectors across 53 countries and territories, notes the total revenue increased 5% in 2023 to $2.8 trillion, outpacing overall economic growth. Despite economic headwinds, technological disruption, and increased geographic and industry competition. The next 5 years is projected to slow to 3.9%, though, adding $597 billion to the global revenue pie to boost it to $3.4 trillion. Highlighting widespread uncertainty, PwC emphasized that the name of the game in the industry to capture some of that revenue is business model reinvention, which has evolved from a strategic option into an existential imperative, the firm said. When it comes to cinema revenue, the trends have been mixed. Aided by a number of blockbuster releases in 2023, cinema saw a 30.4% year-on-year increase in spending at the box office. But box office theatrical revenue will top pre-pandemic levels in 2026, rather than 2025 as projected a year ago, according to the firm's updated forecast. This is primarily driven by a larger budgeted slate expected to drive more box office sales and more ad spend. explains Bart Spiegel, Global Entertainment and Media Deal. Blah, 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 blah. The firm sees that 2019 box office revenue of 38.55 billion nearly reached in 2025, with 37.68 billion before hitting 40.23 billion in 2026. Global cinema revenue, helped by ticket prices hikes and advertising growth, will continue to grow, but also see a one-year delay. In last year's report, we anticipated the pre-pandemic levels would be reached by 2025. However, this year's report predicts that the return will occur in 2026. Blah, 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 this and that. And I'm sure there's a lot more stuff in here. And they talk about streaming as well. So I think one of the reasons why this is important to look at, in my opinion, is because cinema and movie releases theatrically is very important for the business, right? And ever since we're coming out of the madness of the pandemic, a lot of people are wondering, will we ever get to see movie theater numbers, box office numbers return to whatever we saw prior to all of that? And it seems like year over year, yes, things are improving, but last year took a major hit because of the writer's strike and the actor's strike. So it's causing a lot of movies to be delayed. So I'm not surprised that these levels won't really come back, or we'll see it come back to 2020 until 2026, because that's when a lot of the backlog and a lot of the delays and pushes will finally be all in the clear, right? And we'll finally get a lot of things that are going to be fresh and really, pegged to be hitting where it's supposed to be hitting. But I've said, like, even when I cover news, whenever the chance I have, that with everything getting pushed, all the restructuring from like Marvel, Disney, Lucasfilm, DC, I think it's going to be really, really nuts when you look at what's expected to come out in 2025, but most importantly in 2026. And I think that's why we're going to see a huge influx of people wanting to go back to theaters, because there's going to be a lot of anticipated movies a lot of people are going to see. And this is all going to be good for the industry. Now, will it be sustainable? I guess time will tell. I keep saying that the theater industry needs, or the cinema industry, I should say, for Arnold there, they need to refigure and restructure their deals with studios. They need to be able to lower ticket prices. They need to be able to give more benefits to loyal fans and loyal movie theater goers through their rewards programs and all that, because it's getting very expensive to go watch movies in theaters. And with streaming, every year we're seeing prices increase. So I think what's going to be really important to see moving forward is the bundles. We've already seen them talking about a bundle with Max, Disney Plus, and ESPN, I think it was, or something like that. Bundling is going to be a next phase of what these companies are going to try to do to offset the cost of their platforms and entice more people to subscribe to their services instead of one-shots, right? Because I believe there was a report recently that if you added up all the separate streaming services and you pay for them month to month, it's almost as bad as paying for cable, which is terrible, which is not what we wanted to do. We were kind of hoping to get away from all that. So a lot of things, and I agree with what the mention is here in this article. There needs to be business model reinvention. And it has to happen on the theatrical side and on the streaming side. So I'm very curious what's going to happen in the next couple of years. But whatever happens is going to be very crucial to how things are going to be moving forward. So we'll see what happens. But I'm curious, what do you guys think? What needs to be done on the streaming side and theatrical side in order for people to get back to theaters? Arnold, if I ever have time, watch this movie from my childhood. It's called Fievel the Mouse Wanderer. Every time I see this movie, I feel like these... Fievel the Mouse Wanderer. Are you talking about An American Tale? Maybe that's what it's called here in the U.S., where it's about Fievel the mouse who migrates to America. Is that what I'm thinking about? I'm curious. Let me know. Gorilla saying the next time goes to cinema is November for Gladiator 2. Absolutely won't go see anything comic book adjacent in theater. I won't even stream them for free. Wow. So are you saying, Gorilla, are you saying you're completely done with the comic book superhero franchises for now? Not even Deadpool and Wolverine entices you a little bit? Is it because you've just been so disappointed with all the stuff that's coming out? Wow, not even a bit, huh? All right. Well, you know what? I respect that. I respect that you're putting your foot down. One of my very closest friends, Oz, who works with Double Toasted every Monday night. You could check out his podcast, What Up, Son? Very funny stuff. But he's been a good friend of mine for like over 25 years. And he told me also, he's like, the minute he watched Endgame in theaters, he knew that he was done with movies after that because there was never going to be anything that will ever capture that moment again and build up to that big event, that he never went back to a movie theater to watch any superhero or comic book movie after that. And if he does decide to watch it, it'll be on a whim if he decides to at home. So I think there's a lot of people who kind of feel the same way. It's all the same shit over and over again. Yeah, I don't blame you, man. I honestly don't blame you at all. I will still always be a fan of the genre, you know. But yeah, I will say that if anything, I've been more disappointed than anything recently. So, Arnold, yes, brothers. Yeah, so An American Tail is one of those classic animated movies that I remember watching as a kid, and I remember feeling very emotional about it. It is a very sad movie, but also in a way uplifting, very sweet. I was so jealous because I had friends that owned like a Fievel doll, which was like this big. I believe they sold them at a department store one year, and my mom could never afford to get me one. But I believe I had friends who had it. My niece, I think, had one too. And I was like, oh my God, it's so cute. And then I remember after An American Tail, then they did a movie called Fievel Goes West, right? Where he goes back like to the West and he becomes like a cowboy and all that. So very, very cute. I haven't seen it in a very long time. So I'm very curious how I will feel about it if I decide to watch it now. But yeah, no, thank you for reminding me about that. That is a classic movie for sure. I'm glad you like it too. Girls, at some point, franchise loyalty is just us being taken for suckers. For the most part, yeah, I don't disagree with that. It's just it depends on how you look at that loyalty, right? The thing is, I'm a movie guy. I love film. I love cinema. So if it's not a superhero movie that I'm watching in theaters, it's something else. So I'm always going to go out and watch movies when something's new and looks interesting to me. Now, when it comes to streaming, like let's say, for example, like Disney Plus, when Secret Invasion came out, normally I would have watched it week after week. I decided to wait. I had no interest in watching that series because I have been so disappointed with a lot of the stuff coming out that I waited. When it was all said and done and all the episodes were released, I waited 2 more weeks and then I finally watched it. And then lo and behold, big surprise, I was majorly disappointed and even frustrated to a certain extent. So I'm just like, what is this crap? And unfortunately, it was like that also with Loki season 2. Even though Loki season 2, stronger storyline, stronger show, still, because of how I felt about all these things, it forced me to wait. Star Wars is different for me because I've always been a major fan of Star Wars and I always will. But I always call out whenever something doesn't make sense or is not great. So with the Acolyte right now, yes, I watch it week after week. I'm excited for tonight's last episode for the season. But at the same time, I can recognize when there's stuff that happens throughout the season. I'm just like, why are we doing this? Why is it like this? But I still find myself being entertained. So it's all, it's all about how you look at it and what you do. At the end of the day, these studios, these companies will continue to do stuff like this. They'll continue to milk their franchises because they do make money. And that's just how business is. It's always going to be like that. The minute they stop making money, that's when they'll move on to something else. But they'll find something else to make them money, right? So That's the business. Ba-da-bup, ba-da-bup. You know, I'm saying if I have children, this movie will be their first movie. That's a great first movie to have. I will say that. Arnold saying was such a big Marvel fan, but after She-Hulk, I was done. I don't blame you. She-Hulk was a travesty. I don't know what the hell happened with that. That was just, and I get it because she's very well known for breaking the fourth wall and all that stuff like that in the comic books. But still, that show was just like, there were bits of it that I did find funny and I did laugh out loud. But overall, that show was terrible, extremely terrible. But look who liked it. Those who liked the show were those who weren't huge Marvel fans to begin with. So maybe they were onto something. Maybe they knew how to attract a new audience, and they did. So it's just crazy how it works that way. Gorilla, I don't want stories that fit the template of given characters. I want new stories, weird shit that comes out of nowhere. You know, and that's your preference too. You know, the thing is like our tastes change also as we grow up, as we get older, as we get more and more exposed to certain media. Our tastes eventually change. You know, and there's only so much we can tolerate sometimes. So, I mean, that's unfortunately what happened to me with anime. I used to be a huge anime fan. You know, anything that used to come out, especially like late 80s, 90s, early 2000s, I wanted to see everything. And then it just got to a point where there's too much. I could not keep up anymore. And I ran out of time, and I felt like there were a lot of similarities with all of these new anime shows coming out and movies coming out that I threw my hat off, and I kind of like, I gave up. I was like, you know what? I can't keep up with this genre anymore. You know, from time to time, when it comes to a movie, I will check out. It's like if it looks interesting. Suzume, when that came out, I think was one of the best anime movies I've seen in a very long time. The Boy and the Heron. I'm always a huge fan of Ghibli and Miyazaki, and I thought that was such a brilliant film for him to come back and do. You know, so I will watch stuff like that, but when it comes to like the anime stuff, I'm so far behind, you know, and I don't have that desire to want to catch up and watch them all anymore. Because, you know, I think I've in a way outgrew that. You know, so that's just me. Honestly, I respect women so much, but sorry, I don't like this feminist stuff in the movies. I mean, there are some times when it's a little bit heavy-handed, you know. Like I don't mind it when it's actually telling a compelling story, but when you're adding it just to add it, just for messaging, then I think that's when it gets a little, come on, you know. They're trying to spread the agenda. And it could be done in such a better way sometimes. And I feel like some other ways it's done very poorly. Gorilla fan, me too. I loved and breathed anime. Used to go to conventions and take VHS fan subs, but then I grew up and can't tolerate anime anymore. For the most part, there are still gems like, yeah. See, and that's just how it is. You know, that's just how it is. You know, kudos to those who, after all these years, can still keep up to date with everything. Kudos to them. I mean, that's awesome. I still have friends who are older than me that still watch a lot of anime today, you know, and I respect that. I mean, kudos to them. But for me, I just can't anymore. For me, I'd rather pop in like an indie movie, you know, or watch, you know, like you suggested earlier. Maybe I'll check out a liminal space horror thing on YouTube, because those kinds of things compel me more nowadays. You know, I you know, check out an anytime A24 drops something, even if I've never heard about it, I want to check it out, because who knows? That could be something that could be worth watching and could be intriguing. I did that recently with the movie Tuesday, which is, I think, hitting video on demand this week for the first time. And I knew nothing about the movie. I saw that Julia Louis-Dreyfus is in it. I'm like, okay, let me check it out. And I thought, even though it's weird and it's batshit crazy, I still took away something from it, and I enjoyed it, you know. So for every Tuesday movie, there will always be a Captain America Brave New World that I'm still going to watch. You know, at the end of the day, I'm just a fan of cinema. So The best scene in She-Hulk was when she was twerking. I think that's like the worst scene. So maybe it's the best and worst scene of She-Hulk because that's when I knew the minute that happened, that's when I knew the show was over for me. I'm like, this is what you find funny. I'm like, nope, I'm done. I still watched the rest of the season, but I was just like, you lost me at that moment. That was the moment I knew that show went off the rails big time, big time. Let's talk about, because I know Arnold's probably dying to hear my thoughts on it. Let's talk quickly about House of the Dragon, season 2, episode 5. Everyone here all caught up on House of the Dragon? If you're watching it, or if you're not watching it, maybe you don't care if I talk about this real quick. Let me know in the comments. Because what I do every week now, usually on Mondays, is I'll recap briefly. I now take notes every time I talk about House of the Dragon so that I can kind of pinpoint some things that stood out to me. And, we'll talk about it. So, all right, Gorilla. I'll talk about it for like maybe 30 minutes. If you want to come back, the last things I'll be talking about is I watched 3 Maika Monroe movies for the first time over the weekend. The Guest, It Follows, and Watcher. And I'll be giving my thoughts on those movies for the first time. So if you want to come back in 30 minutes, great. If not, I'll hopefully catch you in the next one, man. The spot with he's so angry. Okay. So let's talk about House of the Dragon season 2, episode 5. So obviously, and girl, I want to make sure you're not going to get spoiled right away. So let me know the minute you're going to be gone so I can start talking about this stuff. All right, Gorilla, thank you so much again. Also, to everyone who is still watching, please don't forget, hit that like button. Would greatly appreciate it. So much so. Everyone here will greatly appreciate it. All right. So obviously, episode 4 was an amazing episode. Crazy stuff happened. First time we got to see dragons battling it out and all that. And we could really see what the effect was going to be once people are starting to realize that this war may be beyond us at this point, right? So with episode 5, I was very curious as to where we're going to go now. How are we going to pick things up after the events of what happened? We lost, unfortunately, a great character, the queen that never was, Rhaenys, who passed away, right? So when this episode started, right? First of all, I don't know if you all noticed, but is it just me, or did the opening credits with the tapestry, I felt like they put a lot of focus on dragons this time around. I don't know, maybe that was just me, but that's something that I wrote down. So one thing I liked about how this episode started was you got to see the fallout, right? You saw Corlys in mourning, not really wanting to believe what just happened. You also had Rhaenyra also in mourning, looking out into the distance, right? It's the same view she had where she saw the unclaimed dragon flying around. And I believe it was across the way where that battle took place too. So I love how you could see the effect of something like this and how it has on these two main people in this whole storyline. But then we go to King's Landing, right? And at King's Landing, very much what they did with the death of the king's child, right? With Aegon's son. They decided to parade. The dragon's name is Meleys, right? Meleys, I think it's called. And this was the dragon of Rhaenys. Head completely chopped off. And now they decide to parade this around town. In a campaign, in a propaganda, very much like what they did with the dead son. And they're saying, this, slain by your own king, King Aegon, blah, 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 this and that. And a very powerful message, but you could see how it affected all the common folk around him, right? Or around them. And I love that one quote from that one guy who said, like, we always looked at dragons as gods. And the other guy said, they're just meat. So I know Christian Cole is probably thinking this is a brilliant idea because he's a man of action, right? He wants people to rise up and rile up and all those things. But I think things are going to turn on them because of what they're doing here. The common folk see dragons as these mythical creatures that aren't supposed to be taken down lightly, right? And because they're very known for the Targaryens to be the ones who ride dragons and be owners of these dragons, to be able to see a dragon being taken down may force them to lose faith in the Targaryen family. And especially since it's a squabble within the family, that I think this is going to have an opposite effect of what they're hoping overall. And you could see like the city folk, the common folk, they don't want anything to do with what's happening. They want to get the hell out of there, you know, especially with the way things are being treated and how they're being treated in King's Landing. Food's rotten. They don't have access to medicine, right? Money is not being spread around. People aren't getting paid for jobs. So it's after they're being treated so poorly because they're not being thought of, right? Because the Targaryens are too busy fighting amongst themselves and caring about all the common folk. So I find that to be very, very interesting. Also, I thought it was very sad that while they're parading the dragon head, right behind them is the burnt, crisp toast body of Aegon, but all covered up, so no one knew that the body was in there. So I thought that was very sad, extremely sad. So I thought that was kind of messed up. Arnold saying, "Don't understand one thing. I hope you can help me. When Arnold has sex dream, yes, that was his mom, and I'm gonna get to that in a little bit. I wrote that down big time." So it looks like Aegon is barely alive right now. It reminds me very much of Viserys, like, you know, when he was in bed, he was bedridden with all the sores and all that stuff like that. And you have, it was so disgusting to see that when they're treating his burns and all that, they had to peel away parts of his armor because they were melted onto his body. It was just so gross and disgusting. And you see Alicent is distraught over it all. Even Aemon shows up just looking at the body, right? And it's just like, you know, Alicent can kind of tell Aemon had something to do with this, but she's just distraught overall, right? And it kind of just shows you, once again, we have another instance where another child has been affected by this, you know, bickering of the families going back and forth. So it's just really, really sad when you think about that. Cole, Alicent approaches Cole, Sir Christian Cole, the Hand of the King, about the events of what happened. And Cole was being very, very selective as to what he's sharing, being very secretive, right? And you can tell, once again, Alicent is feeling so left out about everything, that the person that she ends up, you know, sleeping with, confiding in, is now keeping stuff from her. So she's getting more and more subtracted from all of the events that are happening within this family, right? And then on Rhaenyra's side, you have, it's an interesting dynamic here because you have two individuals, two ladies that at one point were seen very highly in their respective forms, but are now being ignored because they're female. Unfortunately, it's a very sexism way to look at things. You know, the men who are around them are men of war, right? And they're very being active and all that. You know, Rhaenyra has some ideas, but they don't want to listen to them, you know, and they think that she's being a little bit more selective with her actions and all that. And on the same side, you have Alicent, who they're not listening to Alicent either, right? So it's very interesting when you see that dynamic going on there. You have Rhaenyra's son, Jace, going on his own to talk to the Freys, to board them on. And they mentioned that the Starks are moving south. So we could potentially see a team up with the Starks later on in this season, or maybe next season, depending on how you look at things. Rhaenyra, it was an interesting thing when she had a conversation with the White Worm. I believe she's the White Worm, right? That's a Malisant or whatever. Sonoya Mizuno is the actress who portrays this character. And I love the conversation they have together where, you know, we find out that Rhaenyra, she was never really taught the ways of fighting and the ways of battle. Instead, her dad really taught her more about the history, about books, about the lineage and all, which is really mostly her strength, to be honest with you. She knows more about the history of the Targaryen family than I think most of the other people there combined, right? And I think she can use that really to her benefit moving forward. And the line that was said that stood out the most to me was from, and again, she goes by the White Worm, right? Is that what you cannot do, let others do for you. You know, where you don't have to necessarily be a queen that has to be in the forefront of everything. Even though she's a woman of action, she's a dragon rider. She feels like she needs to be in the thick of things. It doesn't have to always be that way. There are people around her that can do things for her, like utilize the people's minds and how they are perceiving everything, and let's do propaganda our way and try to get the support from the common folk, which is going to end up being huge, I think, in the long run for them. So I always found that to be very, very interesting. I wrote down here more ways to win at war, get people on their side. And then, okay, let's get to the part here with Daemon. Daemon having still wild visions, right? I think people are saying that the reason why he's having a lot of these visions is because the bed that he sleeps in is made of those trees, those foreseeing father trees or whatever. That's very mystical things surrounding them. And it's putting a lot of these visions in his head. Also, it could be causing him lack of sleep, or it could be this other Alice, this witch that has a lot of interest in Daemon right now. So maybe she's poisoning him in a certain way. I don't know what it is. But he has a vision. He has a dream where basically we see him, you know, having a romantic relationship with some woman that turns out to be his own mom, right? And one thing that was said to him during this whole vision was that, you know, you're very different from your brother. Something along the lines that, let's see here. I think I wrote it down. Just basically along the line that you may not be better than your own brother. Your brother is good at certain things. You're not. You're more of a man of action. Blah, blah, blah. Things along those lines. And I think this is, in a way, it's very Freudian, I guess, right? When you think about it, is that Daemon is the kind of guy that he always just wants that affirmation, right? He's been vying for the crown for a very long time. A lot of things were given to his brother more so, right? And I think at the end of the day, he just wants affirmation. He looks for affirmation and acceptance from Rhaenyra, right? Even though he kind of groomed her to kind of be on his side in a way. Everything that he does, he's always looking for that sort of affirmation. And he never really gets. And because of that, his actions have done nothing but negative stuff around him and in his life. And I think this is one of the things that, and he uses sex as a way to get control too. And I think because of that kind of vision, it leads into this weird vision and dream with his mom. And I think he was just really hoping to get that kind of affirmation from his own mom, but he didn't get it. And, you know, I think slowly we're seeing him lose his mind, which is going to be very, very interesting to see how it's all going to come down. You know, on a massive sentence in the episode True where he said that you have to call me king. Right. That's another thing. You notice once again, he's looking for that affirmation, that acceptance. Harrenhal, a place that's completely run down that he was able to take hand over fist over. No pushback or anything like that. Yet the people that are still there have a hard time calling him king, right? Because they don't see him as such, right? They will call Rhaenyra queen, and they look at him as king consortum, right? So not necessarily king, but more like king because of association. You know, so it's amazing that this may be eventually the downfall of Daemon, because he just wants to have the title and he wants people to acknowledge him, almost like in wrestling, like Roman Reigns and now Solo Sikoa. Like they want people to acknowledge them, but he's not getting it, right? And it's such a driving force that it may end up biting him in the ass. Speaking of biting in the ass, Alicent, more and more so, is losing control over her own side of the kingdom there. She doesn't want Aemon to take over reign of king or temporary king because she says that she's too young, that he's too young. She wants to do it. She wants to fill the seat in because she did it already before when Viserys was sick, right? And even those that she thought was on her side, Christian Cole, Tyrus, or the little finger of this series. Even the foot lover, I should say, the foot lover doesn't want her to rule either. You know, basically it's like they think Aemon should do it because Aemon is next in line, right? When you look at the lineage and all that. And once again, you see Alicent realizing more and more so that she is completely being shut out and losing full control over everything. And I love what they did here in this scene, where the minute they all turned her down for taking over the seat for the time being, until we find out what's going to happen with Aegon, and Aemon has been appointed as that person, she sits back, and all of a sudden, everything around her is echoed. You hear them talking, but it's very like kind of shut out in a way, and you just hear her focus on her breathing, breathing, as everyone around her is just talking. And it's such a powerful scene when you really look at it, because you could see that she is just losing it. She's just like, that's it. I'm done. I no longer have a steady voice here, right? And she's also hearing the way Aemon is dictating things, right? Do this, do that. This is our next step. And by the way, cut the damn rat catchers down. He has a better handle of the throne than Aegon has ever had, right? So she's seeing all this play out in front of her, and you could see like she is being kind of traumatized by it all. It's so crazy. It's such a powerful scene. I love that scene. Loved it. What's going on aiming to game? Never have I ever thought about that, but maybe you do on a common basis. So hopefully you could figure that out on your own. Arnold, with the separated head, you could see how small dragons are compared to Vhagar. You can't believe how big Valeron was on his prime. Yeah, the whole dragon thing is going to be very fascinating, especially now knowing what they're going to end up doing or what they're going to have to do moving forward. You know, with the unclaimed dragons and all that. Again, I'll get to that in a minute. You know, more so, we are finding out that the war is being handed over to the dragons because that's going to be a major point of contention here at this point. It's not going to be so much as that who has a bigger army and all that, but who has the most dragons and who can take out Aemon's dragon, because Aemon's dragon now is the most feared dragon, right, in Westeros. It was also ordered by Aemon himself that no one's to be allowed in and out of King's Landing. So it's causing civil unrest, which again, they could play into favor of Rhaenyra, especially now that she has her own little spy network working for her and going in there. So we saw scenes of that happening. I love that Jace offered up Harrenhal to the people he met up with. Without even consulting Daemon on it all. So I love that. We're seeing a lot of the consequences of Daemon's actions when he quote unquote instructed the people that were on his side to rape and pillage the other town folk, but they did it so with his banner flying around, which is so messed up. And it's like, oops, I think these guys messed up, and now people are going to look at me in a very different light. And it's everything that Damon wants to do is not going according to plan. It's all backfiring, and I think it's all going to come to a head sooner or later. So it's just really, really crazy. How come the text on the cereal box is upside down but not in the bowl? Because that was a special edition from Stranger Things. It's a little kind of collaboration that they had. So you could only get that from the Stranger Things experience that toured around the United States and internationally. Bro, you can have a chance to a dragon. Yeah, and I think that's really going to be a huge focus of this series moving forward. And I think it's freaking a lot of people out. And like I said, it's the common folk are the ones who are going to be suffering the most, because there's going to be so much collateral damage from this war that it's going to be unfortunate, and it's going to be very sad. Am I dead? By the way, I didn't mean any politics, but that Indiana Jones comment, I was talking about the guy with the nunchucks. Remember Indiana Jones shoots oh, I do remember that. Yes. Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's so funny. Yeah. They did that in another movie too recently. Oh, freak. Which movie was it? Where there's a guy who's just very good with his weapon, and the guy just shot him, and that was the end of it. But yeah. Yeah, if I saw someone like that in an alley and I had a gun, let's just say that I think I'll be happy that I have the gun. Do I think Melis is now a chicken wing for Vagar? Who's Melis again? Can you remind me who Melis? Again, I'm still so bad with all the names happening around. Also, there was a great scene between the wife of Aegon and Aemond right in front of the throne. You could tell she knows exactly his involvement in it all, and basically ask him if it was all worth it. So I thought that was a very powerful scene too. The dead dragon. Chicken wing. Probably. I'm sure Vagar is gonna have a blast with the rest of the remains of Melis. Also, I wonder if, and Arnold, I'm sure you know the answer to this, but I also wonder if Aegon's dragon is left for dead too, because the last we saw is that he was just burning up in the forest, right? But the way the episode ended was also very interesting too. And kind of what I alluded to earlier, where I think the strength of Rhaenyra is going to be how much she knows about the history of the Targaryen lineage. Because now it looks like they need dragons, and they need people to be riding dragons and know how to ride dragons. So they're looking now at the Targaryen bloodline. Even if it's like someone who married into this family or that family, they need people who they feel like they could bring in to, kind of claim these unclaimed dragons that are still in Dragonstone. Yeah, two of them there. There's several dragons that are still in the wild that we haven't seen yet. So I think people like that guy we were introduced to in that one pub, I think that person could play an importance in this story moving forward. And we'll see whoever else they find and kind of scrounge up to see who can claim these dragons moving forward and who can ride them. Because I think at the end of the day, it's going to be a fight to who's going to have the most dragons that could take on Vagar, because he is like the main threat at this point in Westeros, right? So we'll see what happens moving forward. But yeah, this was like, we had the craziness happening in episode 4, And now in episode 5, we're back to playing chess. And that's basically what this is all going to be. This episode was just chess playing, moving pieces here, moving pieces there, seeing how this side can really gain an advantage. Rhaenyra is learning more and more that maybe she doesn't need to be such a like upfront person and be someone that's involved in the everyday and in the weeds. Let people around her do stuff. And now she's going to have this network of spies working for her, spread the good word, use propaganda to her advantage and all that. And, use the Targaryen lineage. We were hinted throughout the show so far that there's so many Targaryens all over Westeros. They just have to pay attention and look, and then they could get more people on their side. So very interesting. I think I would rank this episode a 3 out of 5 stars. I thought it was decent. It's definitely, you need this calm before you get back into craziness. But I thought it was a well done, formulated episode. And I love the consequences that are going to be coming from all the events that are happening so far. We're starting to see that come into fruition. And we are now past the halfway point of the season, and I can't wait to see what else is going to go. And I hate to bring this up every time, but it's interesting to be watching this and watching The Acolyte and just seeing the differences in storytelling, because there's a huge difference between the two. And you can kind of say good storytelling versus mediocre storytelling, right? So yeah. So I've really thoroughly enjoyed the season so far. Arnold, what did you think of this last episode? And anyone else who is currently watching House of the Dragon, what are your thoughts on this past episode that we got? You have nice information because I don't know a lot of this stuff. Yeah. And honestly, I love being surprised. So I love being surprised by all the events that are unfolding and all of that. So I guess in a way, it's a good thing I never read the books. But yeah, I don't know. For me right now, I feel like season 2 may be, in my opinion, may be much better than season 1 so far. I think. Not saying season 1 was bad at all, because it wasn't. But I really, really have been appreciating a lot of this season so far. Now you have funny information for me. Well, don't spoil anything either. I don't want to be spoiled too much. So, as long as there's no spoilers involved, I'll be more than happy to hear it. Once again, everyone, if you're watching live or you're just tuning in, don't forget, hit that like button. Would really greatly appreciate it. Everyone else here will appreciate it as well. Give me 1 second. I am doing my usual, checking my phone to make sure the world is not burning around me, because with stuff that happened this past weekend, you never know. You will never know. That Balron was the biggest and strongest dragon ever. Yes, I do believe I knew that. Who was the writer of Balron? Isn't that one of the unclaimed dragons in Dragonstone right now? Balron. Oh, he was written by the first King Aegon. Oh, he died already of old age. I see. Jaehaerys Targaryen. And Prince Viserys. Oh, Viserys wrote him. Right? Is this the same Viserys? Here's my main criticism of House of the Dragon, and I guess Game of Thrones in general. Can we stop reusing names? I feel like there's so much reusing names that's happening. If they didn't focus so much on reusing names from the past, I bet you the conflict in House of the Dragon would have never happened. There would have been no confusion about the prince that was meant to be, or whatever the case is. There would be no confusion about Aegon, the song of ice and fire and all this and that. There would have been no confusion and conflict. You know, I think because everyone has the same damn name, that people get confused and shit happens. There was a time when Balaron flew away. He came back injured, and nobody knows how. He had but scratched tracks. So what if Balaron is not the biggest one? Well, one thing I do know is that isn't there a bigger dragon in the wild? They call it the Goat Eater, right? And he's an untamed dragon that's out in the wild, right? So isn't that like a threat that has not even been hinted on or addressed on the show yet? DB, are you looking for attention? You have nothing else better to do? Because I think that's just a waste of your time. You could do more things with your time than do stupid stuff like that. So, goodbye. Look at that. I had to ban 2 people already today. That's when you know you're having a good stream. He's the same size like Vagar. Do you mean the cannibal? Is that what they call it? I know there's one dragon in the wild right now that is massive. And yeah, eats other dragons, right? That's the main fear, that this one dragon eats other dragons. Let's see here. Cannibal. Yeah, the small folk of the island called him cannibal because he would practice cannibalism, feasting on dead dragons, newborn dragons, and dragon eggs. The wild dragon sheep stealer is said to have hatched when the old king was still young. So they call this dragon sheep stealer too? Is this the same dragon? Oh no, sheep stealer is another dragon in the wild. And Grey Ghost is another one too. So there's a lot of these dragons that are unclaimed out there, which they haven't even hinted on the show yet. You have to imagine in the books when Balerion fly over the King Castle, everything was dark. So now you know how big he is. Well, yeah. Well, we kind of saw that with what you call it, with Aemon's dragon, right, which is Vagar. Because when Vagar flew over the treetop, you just saw how massive this thing was. It's like a flying skyscraper building. It's frightening, extremely frightening. How's everyone doing today, by the way? I hope everyone's having a good day so far. Again, we're just wrapping up our House of the Dragon season 2 episode 5 discussion. So let us know your thoughts on the most recent episode if you had a chance to see it. This is why you're in the Game of Thrones. The dragons grow up so fast. Yeah. I can't wait to see what else is going to be in store for us, dragon wise. Because literally, they've already hinted at it that this war is going to be the war of dragons. Doesn't matter army sizes or whatever the case is. But if they could somehow find a way to team up versus Aemon's dragon, I think that's going to be very interesting to see how that's all going to play out. You know, is there a Hydra with 3 heads? Does that exist? You know what? I don't even want to know. If it does happen, then I'm in for a treat, I guess. We're gonna be singing like a Ghidorah. It's gonna be like something out of Godzilla. Oh no? Oh okay. If that's true, I'm like, oh my god. I don't know if I'm ready for that. It's gonna feel like a Japanese kaiju movie, for sure. If that happens, you'd quit. Yeah, I think that's when you get a part of the fantasy that I feel like it's a little bit too far. It's big enough that we are dealing with dragons, right? And you can kind of understand. Okay, you could see how dragons would exist in this world, but a three-headed dragon, I think that's a little bit too much. In Game of Thrones, we have to deal with like the Night Walkers, like the people from the north, right? With the Frost King or the Ice King or whatever kind of king you want to call him. Then of course you have the wildlings. You have the children of the forest. You have a lot of supernatural stuff happening, the three-eyed ravens and everything. So everything has been like, okay, it's fantasy, but it's digestible fantasy. Once you get into like these mythical creatures that are like 3 heads or whatever, that's when it's like, okay. So I don't think we're ever gonna get that, you know, but you never know. Yeah, we never saw a baby giant, but we did see giants, right? That was frightening. I remember the first time that showed on TV in those episodes. I was like, "There's no way. How are they going to fight against these things? No way." And then, of course, I knew it was game over the minute they showed that they could turn dragons. Oh, and the dragon like blew the wall down. I was like, "Get out of here. Forget it. Game over." How could you ever fight against that? One arrow in the eye. Better be like Hawkeye or Green Arrow, you know? Or who was the guy in The Hobbit that took down the dragon? Which character was that? Forgot the character's name. By the way, I love archery. If you ever had a chance to go to like an archery range or take up some archery lessons, it's some of the funnest things you'll ever do. And I'm amazed at how good I am, but I love archery. And now that we got the Olympics coming around, that is like one of the events that I look forward to most during the Summer Olympics. I love watching the archery. It's so much fun. So much fun. All right. So I think to close out the stream, I did want to spend some time to talk about these three movies that I watched for the first time. Um, with everybody talking about Long Legs opening up this weekend, everyone is claiming that Maika Monroe is the current day scream queen. I argue you can go back and forth between her and maybe Mia Goth as the two major scream queens in today's modern horror movies. But I realize that I am not familiar at all with any of her filmography. I know of the movies, but I've never had a chance to watch any of them. And Longlegs was my first exposure watching a full length movie with Maika Monroe starring in it. And for the most part, I thought she did a great job. And I thought she's a very interesting type of actress in those type of roles. So I decided to go back. I looked up as to what is kind of like her career defining roles in her movies so far to date. And there are three that people talk about the most: The Guest, It Follows, and Watcher. So those are the movies that I watched over the weekend for the very first time. Very first time. And it's understandable because in 2014, when The Guest came out, I believe It Follows came out in 2015. Watcher came out in 2022, I want to say, or 2021 or something like that. In at least 2014, 2015, I was not big into horror. I've been so far removed from the horror genre that it's been a long time that I had a chance to watch any horror movie. So it's no surprise that these movies went by, flew under the radar for me. So it was interesting to go back to them now, with especially now knowing who Dan Stevens is, right? Knowing who Adam Wingard is. So the first movie I watched was The Guest. And this is really more of Dan Stevens movies. This is more of a Dan Stevens movie with Maika Monroe being more of just like a supporting character that happens to be in this movie too, right? But you could kind of see her, kind of foray into the horror genre, right? And this movie was directed by Adam Wingard. And if you don't know who the Adam Wingard is, he is the guy who has directed the most recent Kong movies, right? Kong Godzilla movies. He directed the last two Kong Godzilla movies. And it made sense now as to why in King X Kong that Frozen Empire, is it Frozen Empire? No, it's something Empire or whatever. But Dan Stevens appeared in it, and I guess they still have a good relationship with each other, right? So he cast him in his movie. But if you don't know this movie, it is a movie about a friend of a soldier of this family who passed away during war or during service, returns home because he made a promise to this friend of his that he was going to watch out after his family, right? And, he becomes like a part of the family. He's looking after things. He's helping the family out. He's trying to, I guess, in a way, defend the boys being bullied at school and all that. And you could tell that there's something wrong with this guy. He's a little bit too intense. Some of his story doesn't seem to pan out correctly, or at least there's something off, right? And it turns out that he is part of this government experiment, who they're building like super soldiers in a way. And this guy broke out of their facility and took one of the identities of one of the people that were part of this program. It turns out the son of the family was part of this program, so was this friend, and this guy took on the persona of this friend, got in contact with some plastic surgeon to change his face around to make him look different, and, just to mask his true identity and all that. But he is a product of the government, and he's a killing machine, basically. He is just trained to kill, right? Especially when his cover has been blown, he is trained to cover his tracks. And as the veil is lifted as to who this person really is, that's when we get to see him just go nuts. You have the government and those guys coming over to try to reclaim him and all that. The cast of this film is so interesting to me because I never expected it. Right, so you had not only Dan Stevens in it, you had Maika Monroe, who is in it as well, and then you also have the guy who is from the government, played by Lance Reddick, right, who unfortunately is no longer with us. Brendan Meyer is in it. Brendan Meyer is like a very common teen actor at the time. So it was a very, very interesting movie, and I found myself really, really enjoying this movie. And especially at the moment when Dan Steven, he just goes full on psychotic mode, right? He's just basically killing all the members of the family. And it gets down to the point where now it's Maika Monroe's character, Brendan Meyer's character. They play brother and sister. They're trying their best to get out of it, to just survive this killing spree that this guy's on, because they are now aware of who he is. They are now aware of kind of what he came from, and he's not telling the truth. So it's in his mind, it's in his training that he has to wipe out all semblance of his identity, right? And he's just basically wrecking shop and getting rid of anyone who knows who he is, so that he could, run away scot-free. So this is, I wouldn't call this as your pure definition of a horror film. This is more of like a thriller suspense type of film, right? But it is part of the horror genre. And Maika was just a very interesting character where she has this tendency to come across very much like who am I thinking of here from the Twilight series? Let's see, Kristen Stewart. She comes across very much like a Kristen Stewart kind of actress, where, and hold on, I'm just looking at something here. Sorry, give me 1 second. All right, sorry. Arnold, Kong and Godzilla is, we don't need every year a new one. I agree. Hopefully they'll take a little break from that franchise, at least the American franchise. Godzilla Minus One is a whole different story. I love that movie. I think it's the best Godzilla movie we've gotten in a very long time. That is a Japanese production, so I don't count that. But I think the Americanized Godzilla films, we do need a break, because I don't know. For me personally, I think they're getting worse and worse, but people still love it. So it is what it is. Okay. Arnold's going to bed. Everyone say goodbye to Arnold. Always a pleasure having you here. I'll be live again tomorrow to talk about the last episode of The Acolyte. So if you're around and you watched it, obviously would love to have the conversation with you there. But thank you as always for your support. Greatly appreciate it, Mama. So yeah, so she comes across very much like a Kristen Stewart type of actress. Very kind of emo, very, kind of like whatever kind of deal like that. She always looks like she's having a bad day. So I always find it interesting, like the kind of character that she plays in a movie like this, and in the following movie that I saw, It Follows. But she comes out of it scot-free. She was one of the persons that put kind of like the final blow to Dan Stevens, even though the ending was very much like a big twist ending where you could see he was able to escape, dresses himself up as a fireman, does one of those quick look backs at her character, and she's like, what the fuck? And then that's how the movie ends and everything. So it's interesting that she is always going to be, and this was a good start of it, that person that is going to be the one to fight back and overcome whatever situation she is facing. She's not your typical 80s, 90s scream queen where, they're the ones that usually end up dying in the movie, or they're the ones running away from everything. She's the one that's going to face things head on, right? And the thing I love about The Guest is that it reminded me of a very good B movie. in a way, I kind of classify it as like a modern day B movie that was actually really well done and very entertaining, very enjoyable, and I was very much entertained by it. So I haven't logged it on Letterboxd yet, but I would probably give this movie a 4 out of 5 stars. Very well done. I'm very glad that I finally get a chance to watch it. Plus, it was really nice to kind of see Adam Wingard's one of his like earlier films that he directed before he became the person that he is now, directing all the Godzilla and Kong movies, right? So the next film afterwards was It Follows. Now, It Follows has such a major cult following. It is considered, I guess, today one of the major modern horror films out there. And again, Maika Monroe is part of this. And the premise and the storyline in itself is so fascinating to me, where you have this entity, this being that attaches itself to someone through the act of intercourse, right? And it is something that carries on within this lineage of people that have passed it along from the next person to the next person to the next person, right? And we don't know what its real motivation is. That's one thing they don't really explain about it much in this movie. We just know that once it attaches itself to you, it's going to follow you wherever you go until it reaches you. And the moment it reaches you, you're basically you're shit out of luck. You're going to die, right? And we saw that happening in the beginning of the movie, where we see this one girl freaking out one morning, running out of her house, running around the streets in what looks like she's in like her sleepwear or lingerie or whatever the case is. You know, people are asking her if she's okay, if she needs help, but you notice something is bothering her, and something is not necessarily chasing her, but she's afraid of something, right? One thing I don't understand is like, why is she running around with heels? I'll never understand that. But she eventually goes into the car. She drives a long, far distance, and she ends up at the beach. And she's calling her parents. She's like, Dad, you know, I just want to say I love you. I know I've been a shit and this and that, blah, 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 whatever. And then she sees whoever she sees, right? And then she, you know, whatever this thing is, catches up to her, and we see what the end result was. And basically, she turned into like a human pretzel, right? So we know the kind of threat that is at play here, but we don't know much about it. So Maika Monroe plays this character who is, again, very Kristen Stewart-like, very kind of emo, quiet, shy, doesn't say much about anything, you know. And she ends up having sex with this guy that she's dating, right? She has this group of friends around her. One who obviously has a major crush on her or whatever. She has a sister that looks up to her and all that. So she ends up sleeping with this guy. And all of a sudden, the guy like turns on her, right? Knocks her out, ties her up. And that's when we get the first sense of what's actually going on here. And it's a very eerie moment where we see this figure just walking towards her. No running. It's just casual walking, right? And this is what's in, you know, the guy's trying to explain to her. It's like, hey, you're the first chance you can get, just sleep with somebody, you know, just pass it on to the next person, whatever, you know, and then just keep running and keep your distance and all this. And it's so, there's a moment where all they're doing on screen is focusing on her face. I'm pretty sure they had like a camera rig to this wheelchair that she was attached to. And you're seeing her emotions just quickly change from confusion to anger to complete fear and just wanting to get the hell away from there, right? And great face acting happening here. And it's just so fascinating to see what's going on. The guy disappears, going off nowhere. She ends up, you know, dropped off in front of her house. Her sister, her friends are finding out what's wrong with her. And throughout the rest of the movie, now you're wondering, who's the being? Who's the one chasing after her, right? And yeah, she gets glimpses of this and that, and then she has to run away from school. She sees this old lady like chasing after her. But every time now she is in a certain area, you as the viewer cannot help but look in the background to see, okay, is there anyone following her? And then you will see glimpses of moments where you see someone walking straight towards the camera, right? They don't acknowledge it. Maybe they'll transition to the next room or outside or inside. But then later on, you'll still see that same person still walking over, right? brilliant stuff here, and it's a lot of stuff that happens in the background that's always so fascinating. But as the movie progresses, you see that she doesn't want to have her friends involved. They come up with this weird scheme about her like hanging out in the pool and maybe um, being able to drown the guy or electrocute the guy, but that never happens. No one else can see it unless you are the one who were uh, possessed by it through the act of sex, or if you are the one passing it on to someone, you still can't see it because they eventually go back to the guy who passed it on to her, and he's the one that kind of helps explain what is happening. Even though we don't know the origin of this thing, we just know how it transfers from people to people and how people see it, right? And unfortunately, it kind of turns her into a slut in the movie because now she just wants to get rid of it, right? So what does she do? She sleeps with a neighbor, hoping that he will do a better job at escaping it. He doesn't. He ends up dying. So now, after that person's dead, this being goes on to the next person, who was the one who passed it on to this other guy, right? So she still finds herself having to have to run away every time. They don't really focus in on it, but it looks like there was a moment where she was at a beach and she sees a bunch of guys on a boat and she starts swimming. It's my understanding she probably went there, flirted with some guy, tried to sleep with this guy to pass it off to him and to buy her more time to try to figure out the plan and how to get away from things. The movie itself was just so unique, and I've never seen a premise like this before. And I think the way it was executed was so brilliant. And I can see why people have this liking to Maika Monroe as an actress in these type of movies. She even though in this movie she wasn't really more of the I'm going to end it myself, she was your typical scream queen where she was kind of running away from things, hoping to get away from it all. It was very interesting to see how that was all played out. Now, in the pool, they shot up this thing. We saw the blood flowing everywhere. We don't know what's happening to this being or whatever the case is. And to make sure that, they got rid of it, she ends up sleeping with the guy that had a crush on her, which I guess at the end of the movie, they kind of are now a couple and they're walking hand in hand together, whatever. But if you notice at the end of the movie, in the background, we do see, once again, the person walking over. And we don't know if that was like a normal person or if this is being, because the way the movie ends is not with that view, but with a back view of the two people walking away from the camera. So another brilliant movie. I'm glad I finally had a chance to see it. And I thought Maika Monroe's performance was so strong in the emotion, in the fear, in the, her not knowing how to deal with the situation or being lost in it or being very naive about it. She played that character very well. And mind you, too, she was still very young. Between The Guest and It Follows, she was still a very young actress. So, very good movie. I'm glad I had a chance to see it. I would give this also a 4 out of 5-star rating on Letterboxd once I log it in. Well done, right? So now we move forward to 2022. She's definitely an older actress at this point, and she does a movie called The Watcher. The Watcher, this is, once again, we're going through subsectors of the horror genre, where I would, again, consider this to be like a psychological thriller type of movie, where you have this couple that moves to Bucharest, very lost in translation, like where she gave up her own career to, go along with the husband's career, which finds him in Bucharest. So she's now just stuck doing her own thing or not doing anything at all. She is in an apartment and she notices that someone keeps watching her from across the street. It's very Hitchcockian in a way. Kind of reminds me of like Rear Window or movies like that, where you don't know who this person is that's spying on her this whole time. And most of the movie, she's trying to figure out who this person is, right? And every time she seems to get close, she gets more and more distance from it because, oh, maybe this wasn't the right person, or maybe this person wasn't, following you. Maybe this person was looking at you as someone who is constantly bothering them and looking at them and maybe harassing them, right? So it's funny how the kind of the thematic themes in this movie is like gaslighting, not believing, the word of somebody, especially a female, when they say that they're being followed by somebody or being watched by someone. There's always an excuse, and the husband always makes excuses like, "Oh, maybe you're, imagining this, or maybe it's not really true," right? And it's interesting too because when you look at It Follows, the theme there for me is like promiscuity and sexual disease and how that easily can spread if you are to look so deeply into messaging, right? I feel like those are kind of like the things you could take away from those movies. So here, it screamed a lot of like gaslighting and not believing women when they tell about certain situations happening around them. But when she finally comes to the realization that this person does exist, and she ends up getting captured herself. There's a serial killer in the neighborhood happening where this person will attack younger women and chop their heads off, right? And they thought they caught the guy. It turns out to be this other guy that at one point they had in front of them, but he just claimed to be just a simple neighbor minding his own business, and he's being constantly harassed by this woman who is new here and is kind of annoying because all she does is complain and freak out and run around the hall screaming. So everyone around her like kind of doesn't like her anymore until she, befriends like a sex worker or a stripper next door, and she becomes a victim, right? So that's basically how she comes across this killer for the first time. And in kind of along the lines of what I say, you would see her in her Long Legs counterpart. She ends up the one facing things head on. She tries to meet up with this guy. She investigates things on her own without the help of anybody, really, at the end. And has a one-on-one confrontation with this guy and almost dies at the end because the guy kind of slits her throat, leads her to bleed to death, basically, right? But she has the final say when she finally picks up the gun and shoots him and kills him straightforward in the face of everyone that was doubting her husband, the neighbors, and all that stuff. She walks out bloodied, scarred, but was able to finally have that one last moment where she looks at you and said, "I told you, I wasn't freaking out and I wasn't imagining things. I told you this was happening." And that's basically how the movie ended, right? So it's very interesting to see this filmography of Maika Monroe and the movies that she's attached herself to and the things that she's done, where, and I think she said this in an interview before, where the type of horror movies that she's doing, or the type of horror movies that are very important today, when you give her the kind of moniker of Scream Queen, she's not your typical running away, screaming for help, looking for someone to save her, covered up in blood and all that. She's normally going to be that person that will face things head on and be the final say, be the final person that will hopefully put an end to whatever supernatural, psychological thing is happening. And we already saw that in The Watcher. We saw that in The Guest. Not so much in It Follows, but she did kind of take things under her own control in certain ways, but she was definitely more of the runner in that one. And then in Long Legs, Long Legs, she is a person who took action, who wanted to investigate all the weirdness that's happening in that movie, and ended up becoming the one to kind of solve things at the end without spoiling too much there. So I'm thankful that I was able to finally watch these three movies and appreciate each one of them for their own different ways and their own different ways of storytelling. The Watcher, even though I thought it was a great movie, it for me isn't as good as It Follows or The Guest, so I would give this a 3 out of 5 stars. But Watcher is still a pretty decent movie. I would heart it because I did like it. But out of the three movies, Watcher is probably the one I would go back to the least in her filmography. I would definitely watch The Guest again or It Follows again. And I know there are talks about there being a follow-up to It Follows, like an It Follows 2. So we'll see if that ever comes into fruition. But yeah, Maika Monroe. I'm so new to her filmography, and thanks to Long Legs, I finally had a chance to finally go back and catch up on a lot of her films. And I'm so thankful that I have. And again, reintroducing myself to the horror genre, it's so fascinating to me to see a lot of these movies that I've missed. And these are movies that a lot of people who are big fans of the genre, that they say that these are kind of the main staples of the current horror genre of today, the modernized horror, the elevated horror, however you want to call it. The horror movies that have more of a way of telling stories that's not all about the killings and the slashing and the murders. It plays with your psyche and the way you think about things, the way how things are unfolded. The one thing I'll always say about Long Legs is that I'm sure there were a lot of people, and there's still going to be a lot of people who are going to be going into that movie with high expectations about death, body count, and the deaths that happen. And that's not the point of the movie. It's more psychological than that. It's more about why are these things happening and how are they happening, and what can one do to figure it out to solve it, right? And that's basically the strength of a movie like Longlegs. And because the way it kind of lingers with you after you see it, how it like sticks with you and how you still think about it. It's been 2 weeks since over 2 weeks since I last saw it. And to this day, I'm still thinking about it. And it's so fascinating to me how well of a story can do that to you. And the one thing I always say is that a story is done well when you can't stop thinking about it or talking about it a week or two after you've seen it, right? So yeah. So that was just my thoughts on Maika Monroe's filmography, at least the movies that I've seen recently, and with Longlegs there. So yeah. So I'm happy I finally had a chance to share all those things with you. Cookie, you want to know about Saturn? The planet Saturn? I don't know if you're still here. I'm sorry if I missed your chat from earlier. But, when I get into my groove, I get into my groove. But I'll hang out for like another 5 minutes to see if anyone else wants to talk about anything that was mentioned today in today's stream. I will be back again tomorrow to talk about Star Wars The Acolyte. The final season airs tonight, so I'm going to be looking forward to seeing that when it drops. And I'm going to share my thoughts like I have done every week on the show tomorrow. And then maybe we could talk more about any of the recent news within the Star Wars world. So if you want to check that out, come check me out tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Talk about The Acolyte. Also, if you are planning to participate in Prime Day, I posted on the channel a post with my Amazon affiliate link. I will never, ever ask you to buy anything. But if you happen to be thinking about buying something, or you're already planning to pick something up during the sale, all you have to do is click on my link and then proceed to Amazon and then just hang out and then do your purchases there. It doesn't cost you anything extra. And, we earn a little bit of a commission from those sales, and anything that is earned through there goes back to the channel and helping improve on the channel and the streams and the videos and all that. So always appreciate all of your supports there. What's going on, GTA crew? It's been a while since I've seen you. I hope you're doing well. Hope you're having a good week and a good day so far. I do remember you. I also haven't been streaming a lot recently because I'm getting over a cold, a very bad cold. So I'm sure you haven't seen me streaming for a minute, but I do remember you. How you doing? If you're just tuning in, also don't forget, hit that like button. All of us here will greatly appreciate it. If you're just tuning in, I talked about a lot of stuff today. Box office, horror movie genre, last year compared to this year, Maika Monroe and her movies that she starred in, a little bit about Longlegs, House of the Dragon, Season 2, Episode 5, all that good stuff. Yeah, I'm doing well. I'm just recovering. Like I said, I'm still recovering from my cold. I lost my voice last week. So I did one stream on Thursday and I lost my voice the day after. So I was pretty much knocked out for the rest of the weekend. So I'm slowly getting back to normal, so yeah. Getting myself ready for The Acolyte, last episode to air tonight. I'll be talking about that in tomorrow's stream. And then on Friday's stream, I'll be talking about the new movie Twisters that I'm excited to check out and talk about, especially since the first Twister movie was very in high rotation, especially on my VHS rotation, watching at home. I love that movie. In a way, it's kind of like a guilty pleasure movie of mine, but it's such a good movie. It's so much fun. I can't wait to check it out. I'm curious what they're going to do with this new movie. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. Uh, Hopefully, I'll be back to my usual self in the next couple of days. So, have you watched or played anything recently, GTA Crew? Wow, I've been streaming for almost 3 hours. How about that? Is my camera not focused? What the hell? This camera's weird sometimes. There we go. That looks a little bit better, I think. Going out a lot. You're enjoying your summer, I hope. All right, everybody. I'm going to be on for another 2 minutes. So if there's anything you'd like to talk about, bring up any topic, let me know. Any topic that is like, movie and pop culture related. I need to be careful with that nowadays. Oh, that's right. You are in the UK, right? Yeah. Are you a fan of football? Were you disappointed with England's performance versus Spain? It is very warm. We are for the last 2 weeks. We've been going through a major heat wave over here, where every day there's been like a major heat advisory of how bad it is. Um, so yeah, it's been terrible. And when I had a cold, it's even worse. So it's very very hard to deal with. Yeah, don't talk about it. Yeah, I was kind of bummed out because I'm actually a fan of and I don't know where you fall along this. I know there's a lot of people who kind of don't like him now. Harry Kane, because I'm a fan of Tottenham Hotspur, and he was always a main player for that group. So I was rooting for him at least, but it looks like he can't seem to seal the deal. Any team he's on, it's almost like a curse. That's all I'll say. So yeah, kind of unfortunate. Can't believe we always think it's as a Tottenham Hotspur fan, I know the feeling because I remember every season I just be like, oh, this is the year. This is the year. Oh, what the hell, But also, all the teams I follow are the same. In basketball, I'm a major Knicks fan. Every season, same story. In baseball, I like the Mets. Every season, same story. So maybe I just have a thing for like the underdog that never seems to make it. I don't know. It's kind of frustrating to be honest with you. none of the teams I followed have won any kind of championship in a decade or two, I think. It's kind of sad. 50 years plus since, oh my gosh. I could only, and again, we don't have to harp on this too long, but I could only have imagined how amazing it would have been if England won. I think all of you there would still be hungover. I can only imagine. Because, yeah, I don't think a lot of people realize, especially here in America, how big football is. Especially like in the UK or anywhere like outside of the United States. I mean, it's growing in popularity here year after year, but still, it doesn't compare. So I can only imagine. Yeah, that's why I tell myself every year, there's always next time. There's always next time. You know, NBA is on their summer break, but they're going to be starting up again in October, and we got a lot of new players that we picked up, and I'm going to say, oh, this could be the year, this could be the season. We'll see. You know, Tottenham, that season is going to be starting anytime soon, right? Now we got the Olympics coming up. So it's going to be really interesting to see what's going to happen with a lot of these teams. I don't follow baseball like I used to, so I don't know how the Mets are doing. Probably not doing that well, so I won't be surprised. Yeah, but it's always going to be next time. Next time, we'll just see. At the end of the day, I'm just a fan of the sport, the sports that I watch. I enjoy to watch. If we do well, awesome. If we don't, here we go again. Right? As C3PO would say in Star Wars. All right, y'all. I think I'm going to call it as I am crossing the 3 hour mark. Oh, do I watch Lakers basketball? I don't. I'm not a big LA fan. When they played against New York, I watched them. But other than that, I don't really follow the basketball stuff. Also, I'm not. This is a hot take. I'm not a fan of LeBron. So I haven't been a fan of LeBron in a very long time. So do you like the Lakers? Oh, you are. Okay. What was your thought when they picked up his son? Do you think that was done to keep him on the team, or do you really think they feel like that he could be an actual asset to the team? Because I don't know, if that was me, I wouldn't want to play on the same team my dad's playing on. Could you imagine the amount of pressure that's going to be? Also, I think, now correct me if I'm wrong, this may end up being, sorry, the first time we will ever see a father and son play on the same team at the same time in basketball. Am I correct in saying that? Maybe. I don't know. So I think when you look at it in that point of view, I'm going to be very curious how that's all going to play out. Because for the life of me, I can't think of any other example of that at all. I'll be curious to see how it's going to happen. Yeah, that pressure might be an issue, but we'll see. Maybe he's different. Maybe he feels so comfortable being around his dad that maybe it's going to be very different. Who knows? Who knows? The Lakers so bad last season, though. It's crazy how bad they were. I wonder if they're going to be able to turn it around this upcoming season. But we'll see. Every season, there's a new story to tell, right? So, all right. I think that is a good sign or a good time for me to call it. So, once again, I appreciate everybody for chiming in and hanging out on the stream. Before I go, quick reminder, I will be back live again tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern time. The main topic is going to be Star Wars: The Acolyte. We're going to be talking about that because tonight's the last episode of the season, and we'll talk about how everything ended in tomorrow's stream. Have a wonderful evening, GTA crew. Really appreciate you coming in and saying what's up and hanging out for a bit. Also, big shout out to Am I Dead Yet? Jester for checking out the stream earlier. Big shout out, as always, to Arnold and to Scorched, who showed up earlier. Gorilla Fantasy, always a pleasure having you stop by. Clone Wars for Life, another someone I always appreciate stopping by and saying what's up. Really happy to see everyone coming in, saying what's going on, hanging out with me, talking about nonsense, movies, and all the like. So, again, back live tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern time, talk about Star Wars. So if that's your thing, definitely hang out. But until next time, stay cool, stay classy, stay safe. I will catch you all in the next one. Peace out, everyone.